Hello, and welcome to Radio Free Nintendo. It is June 1st, 2023. I am James Jones. I'm joined today by Mr. Guillaume Vayette.
Good evening.
Mr. Greg Leahy.
Ahoy, ahoy, everyone.
And Mr. John Lindemann.
It's great to be here, James.
It is great to have you, John. So I want to point out that this is episode 825, and I promised last week that I would write the article entirely in the form of an interview with myself, and I did
it. I think I've charged you in the past with like doing some sort of sock puppetry when you've talked about yourself, your own Twitter account and the RFN Twitter account, which you claim is sentient, which I think you might have to drop that now that AI is officially going to kill us all within X number of years.
I'm fine with that.
It's not funny anymore, James. You know.
I'm fine with that.
It's you, and yeah, I feel like the article this week gave me the full version of that experience for real.
The figuring out what the correct editorial way by AP standards to document the interview back and forth when both sides are the same person. Weirdly, the style book doesn't handle that. Very odd.
I appreciate the craft involved in that, though.
I did look it up, and then I was like, should I ask on the AP wiki what to do here? And I'm like, I think they're going to have more questions than answers for
I don't know. In fact, my guess would be that somebody would love to answer that question for you.
Oh,
because nobody else has asked them a question for probably about 20 years.
It would probably cause a massive fucking debate. And that would be the end state for it, of just like, well, no, you should cite the outlet, even though the outlet is the same person. And then for the reviewer or for the actual interviewee, you continue to use their initials.
Yeah, it would be definitely be throwing chum into the water with the sharks. That probably haven't had any chum for a while.
The decision to add the third editor's voice was a decision that I made late. I think I need to imply the existence of a third person in this interview.
Yeah, James is his own Trinity processor from Xenoblade.
You know what? That I would probably do a better job. I'm just going to say
the editor one was the one that was like Alvis or whatever, that's supposed to kind of balance the other two.
It just fucked off instead.
Yeah, you would, wouldn't you? You'd bugger off to the first available alternate universe.
It's like, oh, these two. Nope, don't want to deal with this. It is the the addition of the laughs is what cracks me up every time I look at it. It's just sitting there, and then somebody.
I hate to say the really obvious thing, but it did actually give me a pang of nostalgia for Iwata asks. The parenthetical laughs were an indispensable part of that experience, and they were very good, and I do miss them genuinely.
Originally, this thing was JJ all the way down, which was extremely confusing even for me while I was trying to edit it. I'm like, wait, what? Hold on, let me do this again. It's fine. This isn't self-indulgent because I don't think I indulged myself here. This took for fucking ever. So self-indulgent would just be like, I take the XML from the RSS feed and slap it in the article and hit save.
Yeah, this was work. It was actually more elaborate than I had anticipated.
Yeah, this is the problem if I listen to the episode before I write the article, though, because then I have to actually pay out the promises I make during the episode. And it's like, fuck.
Mm-hmm.
Fine.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the payoff.
Yeah, you kind of painted yourself into a corner there.
I did. I could have just ignored it.
Have you not listened to the episode where you said you'd stream Disaster then? Is that why that hasn't happened?
I said someone would stream Disaster. I didn't say it would be
apparently,
me. Someone has.
Apparently, I'm Mr. I of J instead of Mr. Diamond J now.
That's, you know what? I love that. I love that.
I did get a chuckle out of that for sure. That is going to have legs. I know it because the thing is, James, you can't defeat an idea. And now the idea of me streaming Eye of Judgment on Twitch is now out there, and it's going to be a thing.
Once a great idea has reached its moment, it's like, there's a part of me that actually really wants to shoutcast you playing Eye of Judgment. Like you have the stream of it, and then I have the stream where I'm shoutcasting it with somebody else. We're just talking over it and giving commentary, like, I can't believe he made that move right there. Oh my god! And just absolutely losing our shit on it. But it's, a good idea's time has come, which is the Eye of Judgment on the PS3 in 2023.
Yeah, it's called a renaissance, James.
It's something. I wanted to start with this show this week with some email. So I reached out to these guys and we said, let's do some email. We've been kind of neglecting non-Zelda email for a little bit, and we got plenty of time to talk about Zelda and other stuff. But we're going to kick it off with listener mail. Listener mail goes to RFN at NintendoWorldReport.com. That's RFN at NintendoWorldReport.com. And, John, I'd like you to read the first email.
When you asked me to read the first email, I always wonder what you have in store for me.
I actually don't remember which one was first, so it's not a setup. It
feels like a setup, always, but...
legitimately,
maybe...
I can't... There's one of two that's first, because I flipped the order around a bunch of times. I literally picked you because you're not going to be around next week.
We do have breaking news, though. I genuinely did not know this until just this moment. From looking at the front page of Nintendo World Report, that everybody's 1-2 Switch real for some reason, as Donald opines in the headline. Launching June 30th, so forget Ghost Trick. Ghost Trick's cancelled, everyone. That's the big one.
Oh my god. It's real, and
it's unspectacular.
It's real, and
nailed it, Greg.
Announced on Twitter with an image that looks like it's from one of the eShop games I make fun of on Twitter. Is somebody wearing the horse mask, and then a bunch of people who look like they are from like a clip art service holding. What are they holding?
I don't know, but what's that horror manga artist? Ito something?
Yeah.
Yeah. This seems like his style. I feel like.
Are you suggesting that everybody's 1-2 Switch is the whole made for me? Is that what this is?
Basically.
Great. I can't. Why? It's got a price. It's $30 US.
Obviously, it's been reported on that this did exist, hence Donald's headline, for some time, and that maybe, they decided to sit on it eternally. It wouldn't have been the first game that they did that for. They chosen to, but I guess, this does feel very much like one of those, okay, we'll release it, but...
This is like this is the second finger in the monkey paw that got us finally Advance Wars.
Yeah,
it's true.
It's the lowest footprint release you could imagine. Again, I said last week with the Mario game, like Super Mario Advance, this is self-aware. They're kind of let's drop these games that aren't the sexiest part of the expansion pack when everyone's distracted with Zelda. I feel like there is some of that same self-awareness at work here.
Yeah, they have air cover.
So. As Donald points out in the article, the word of the game existence was revealed on Fanbyte last year, and with the note that the game, quote, tested very poorly internally, and there was debate about whether to release the game at all. Oh, good. I guess
this is, I guess in the zeitgeist in the US at the minute, sometimes you have to compromise so that no one's happy.
That's right. Everyone's mad.
We won't release it properly. We'll release it some time from now, and in the most half-assed way we can.
But people are still going to play it and see it's bad. Maybe they made it better since those internal reviews. I doubt it.
I doubt it. That would qualify as the old good money after bad scenario.
I mean, isn't releasing it potentially good money?
Yeah, but that's why it's with this very low footprint. Presumably, this would appear to be about as much marketing as it's going to get. So.
Yeah,
please.
That Twitter post is about it.
Please do not play this game. Oh my god, there is. I'm trying to see if is there any follow up? Is that it? Is it just one post and they're?
Well, I mean, it's releasing in 30 days, so we still got time. Like, they're leading up to it, of course. It's going to be a multi-week, marketing extravaganza.
They gave more info for the pastel Joy-Cons that are coming out the same day.
I mean, James, what we're saying is you still have time to pre-order it.
You're right, I do.
It is funny that because there's been so much made of the fact that Nintendo had not really had anything beyond Pikmin 4, this year, it's just like, okay, there's a game a month, basically, for the first half of the year, except for June, weirdly, but no, turns out they had it all along. They just didn't want to actually say what it was because they're probably ashamed of it.
It's always good when you've got a game that's so bad you're like, no, we probably we finished it, but we should just not.
We should have been able to puzzle out it was that game. You know what I mean? Like, what if there is there will be a game for June. It's just not one that they're actually willing to fess up to yet. It's like the whole thing in episode 2 of Star Wars where it's like, oh, well, you can tell that they've just deleted the planet from the computer because the gravity of all the other sort of, surrounding star systems would suggest it should be there. And there's this gap. We should have known. We should have been able to predict it, but we just didn't because we didn't want to because it's horrible.
I'm dumbfounded. I'm dumb. But they haven't even released a trailer. Seren is on Twitter saying, put out a fucking trailer for everybody's 1-2 Switch, you fucking coward.
That is really weird because, even if you go to the eShop page, there's just the cover, question mark, and one picture of 2 people fake, pumping bike tires, I assume. But it's hard to tell.
It is on the homepage of the eShop, but the very bottom. Yeah, you're right. There's nothing. Not even a description of what games are in it. So all right, mix up your next get together with everybody's 1-2 Switch. TM game. Wait, excuse me. With the everybody's 1-2 Switch TM game. You don't have to put game there. We know it's a game. We know it's a game. You fucking fucks. You don't have to put the word game there. And actually, it's your next get together with everybody's 1-2 Switch ! TM game. Period. Just erase the word game. Okay, anyway. Grab some Joy-Con TM controllers, asterisk, or smart devices, double asterisk, for team-based games that are easy to set up and feature everything from balloons to aliens and more. Wait, all right.
Yeah, from balloons to aliens and more. It's just a poorly constructed phrase where, everything from balloons to aliens covered the more.
What is the continuum from balloons to aliens?
Surely there can't be more than that. Surely not. Surely.
No, wait, Greg, but wait, there is more.
It's in this game, you say. Where can I buy this?
But that phrase implies a continuum, which means there's some metric by which one can measure balloons.
It's like how far a balloon can reach to the what layer of the atmosphere a balloon can reach. And then there's aliens. So that's like a huge space, isn't it? That's light years. Literally, it's everything in between.
Or maybe it's like everything from the banal balloons to more, esoteric aliens. But
maybe,
everything and then more.
So
everything between that and everything outside that, I guess.
Right.
So or a few things outside that. At least.
So I mean, everything within the realm of human comprehension. But then there's also an entire set of stuff that is outside the realm of human comprehension. So
it doesn't say and everything more. So you've got a band, like a continuum, like a spectrum of things between balloons and aliens. Unsure what that is. And then outside of that spectrum, there are a few dots around.
Yeah. So there is at least one item that if you were to look at that continuum that goes from balloons to aliens is either less than a balloon or greater than an alien.
Now, what about other stuff that people thought was getting shot down by the US government after the Chinese thing?
Oh, okay, there you go.
Is this the continuum that they're referring to?
It has to be.
Yep. So where does the COVID satellites fall in there? All right. Continuing. We still haven't heard what any of the games are yet. Just to be clear, we have named no games.
Yeah, but there's a line here that gives us a clue. Okay, sorry.
People at your next party can get moving and show off their teamwork in this multiplayer mashup. A mix of games and modes to keep you on your toes. Okay, that's not a sentence.
No.
There's no verb there.
That might have been a title, but they messed up the formatting.
Yeah, but that's not a sentence. Use Joy-Con controllers or smart devices, team up, and let the games begin. Yeah. Split into teams and see which group can win a certain number of games first. How many? Just a certain number. The number is 172, by the way. You're going to be here for a long fucking time. Many games have several variations that change up the rules and add extra challenge. Yes, that's what a variation is. Thank you.
Software description. They could not have made the description more vague.
Software description provided by the publisher. What description?
It's as if they're trying to avoid a lawsuit by declaring that this is like has any kind of quality whatsoever. So they're just describing you split into teams and you can see which group can win a certain number of games first. Like this is the most unimaginative way that you can describe a game where you can compete in teams.
Was this description written by an AI?
It's got a vamping, isn't it? You know what I mean? It's like if someone's got an earpiece in and they were supposed to be getting actual details about the game to relay to some people that had questions about it, but the earpiece has malfunctioned and now they're just like, well, I mean, you split into teams and play games and someone wins. Just waiting for the earpiece
somebody
to kick
wins. Somebody somewhere wins. It
is, pretty astonishing. I mean, I can't obviously confirm anything about the reporting about it testing badly or whatever, but I mean, the other factor I assume was in play was presumably at some point it was developed, for release earlier, and then it's like, the pandemic kind of puts a bit of a damper on the idea of, indoor gatherings and hijinks and, local multiplayer. Like, I don't know whether that might have played a role in punting it into the long grass for a certain length of time.
I want to paint an image. So if you haven't seen this picture, I could just tell you to go Google it, but I want to paint an image for you. All right. So it's a screen where one extreme of the screen is purple, the other is yellow, and there's a gradient that's kind of going between them. It kind of looks like an image for a knockoff Splatfest, like a game that's knocking off Splatoon, which Sony wouldn't know about that at all, or Square Enix, technically speaking. And they've got their Splatfest like analog, but it doesn't look like Nintendo stuff. It looks very different. And then there are, on one side of the image, there are 5 people holding Joy-Con like they're rowing a boat. And they all look excited, but maybe one of them looks terrified. He's wearing a green blazer, which somebody's wearing like a workout tracksuit from the 80s.
Okay, so they're not, and they're not pumping, like they're all doing kind of a pumping motion, I guess you can imagine, but they're not bikes, as I said earlier. They're, of course, balloons.
Yes.
Now I am seeing the genius of this description.
Yeah. So wait a minute, what's the mini game with pumping aliens instead?
Well, so hold on. So they've got a bunch of balloons behind them. And then on the other side of the image, on the yellow side, there are 5 stock image people who are holding their cell phones over their head, all screaming. And then there's some pictures of badly rendered UFOs above them.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the center, there's the Everybody's 1-2 Switch logo, which looks like something that would come out of a Serbian development studio you've never heard of before, that only ever releases one game on the eShop. I'm not picking on Serbia. It could be any Eastern European country that you're like, wait, that's a studio? And then they never appear again. And then in the middle, acting as the MC of this bullshit, is a man in a purple textured suit with black, it's really more of a tuxedo, with black collar coming out and a purple bow tie. Oh, and he's wearing a horse mask and gloves, and he's holding a Joy-Con and a cell phone, and he's got a carrot in his pocket. So I think when the person said from balloons to UFOs, is it possible that the person who wrote that article literally only had this image to go off?
It's very possible.
The fucking analogy with the earpiece is more accurate than I imagined.
Well, also, I'd like to point out the kind of the cult-like undertones of that picture, where there's people around this guy wearing a horse head, and they are holding up Joy-Cons above their heads like they're worshiping him.
Oh, those are cell phones, to be clear, but it does look like a skit out of a Yakuza game. Yeah. I'm going to be honest. And honestly, I would feel better about it. This feels remarkably unself-aware, which is, I mean, Nintendo's not always self-aware.
No.
So there are words in the background, like in the background gradient, and I'm trying to make out what they are. But the problem is they're like blurred out by the gradient. So it looks like one of them is QU, maybe it might say quiz. There's a stopwatch. There's B, and then I can't tell what the other letters are. Why would you put this much shit into the background if you're not going to make it visible? Are they trying to make us play detective? Is this their marketing scheme? Is their marketing scheme to release such an enigmatic piece of shit that they're trying to make us research it?
I do feel like we've been spending the last 10 minutes trying to decode the message that Nintendo's trying to send us. And I feel like we could have maybe solved the questions we had reading the description just by looking at the picture. So now everything from balloons to aliens, of course, in that spectrum in the middle is horse.
Right.
And so we have the answer here.
So the spectrum is balloon horseman alien.
Right.
So
and the horse is the only one with the power of the Joy-Con and the phone.
Yeah, and I don't really respect the people, the horse people either, just because they tend to be just, it's like
I don't respect the horse people either.
Pick a side, you centrists. Pick a side.
I am filthy with episode titles already.
Pick a side, you horse people centrists.
I don't know. If anyone's seen the movie adaptation, I'm just thinking of like technology versus horse.
Horse is a technology. We made horses what they are.
That's right.
Like horses didn't look like that when we got them. We're like no. We need you to be more built to our needs. So I mean, horses. I do like that the horse has a black tongue. That's a nice touch. It's extra haunting. Everything about this is weird, and I'm now convinced the person who wrote the description literally had nothing to go on but this image.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we need you to write an eShop description. Cool. Do you have a trailer? No. This is all we have. Mm-hmm. This is all Japan has sent us. Oh, I should go see if the Japanese eShop has one. Oh, I really hope I go there. And it's not
well, I mean, it's kind of even sadder. It's always obviously they're not bothering to release Advance Wars in Japan.
No.
But presumably they will get this.
So I don't see it on the page yet, but that could just be because it's early in the morning. They have Pikmin 4, which is a game that still exists.
Oh, yeah, it's close at hand. Next month, James. Next month.
I will believe Pikmin 4 is coming out when Pikmin 4 is already out. That game has been announced for 1 billion years. All right, let's see if I go to the software. On the software page, it is still not present. Nintendo Switch Sports gets more coverage. No. Multiple Katamari games show up here, but not this one. Yeah, they have. Oh, wait, there it is. I got it. Everybody switch. They have. Oh, you're fucking kidding me. So they have less text. Somehow they have less text than we have. They also only have 2 images, but because of how the eShop is set up there, it's a marquee that scrolls. So it's that same banner image, everybody's 1-2 switch. But then it's the picture of 2 people playing the pumping game, but they're split because there's not a third image to put there. So they're basically like standing on opposite sides of the stupid banner image. It's amazing. What What a display. I am trying to... So what I will say is the Japanese is very simple in this article, which means I can actually read it, which I don't like very much. But there's not a lot here to put it in perspective. Split into teams and play against each other in... I guess that's types of games everyone can play. You can also use your smartphone as a controller. That's the whole description. That's the whole fucking description. That's it. That's the whole... There's nothing else. There's nothing else. That's even more vague than what we had. I kind of... This is genius marketing. I kind of want to know more about this game now.
Yeah, the old leave a one more axiom. You know, they're living up to it.
Leave them wanting anything.
It's the old Devil's Third sort of axiom of marketing, right?
That's such a great example of like, well, I guess we have to release it.
Yeah.
The period of Devil's Third where NOA still wasn't talking about it, and NOE is like begrudgingly talking about it, was pretty great.
Yeah, NOA went to extra lengths to sort of almost communicate its displeasure at the fact that it was having to do it. We
are being compelled to release this against our will.
But that at least makes more sense because presumably, agreements were signed with outside parties that they had to live up to.
Right.
Whereas, I mean, this is their, internally, financed and developed product. So, anytime you have something that seems to be with such obvious reluctance, it is a little bit odd why we're seeing it all when you consider that sitting on something in perpetuity is something they are willing to do.
Like, Nintendo UK doesn't even mention this game yet. Now, granted, it's the middle of the night. I get that.
Yeah. Tomorrow morning, I'm sure it's going to be a big blowout.
I want them to have even less text than the Japanese one. I want them to just be like, it's a game. We don't know what it is either. And that's the whole text. Fuck it. I want every region to say less than the one before it.
There's something weird. I need to check something, but I can click for a physical version, and it's directly from Nintendo. I don't think I've seen that before.
I've seen it a couple times, but does that mean like you can buy a physical Did they Oh my god, that's why they're releasing it. They ordered physical copies back in the day and then tested it internally, and they're like,
they wanted, right? So it's actually like trying to get something for those. I mean, in Donald's article, it mentions 30 US, 40 Canadian. That's your prices. So
sucker porn every minute.
What if it's possible that they ordered the carts and then people internally were playing it and like, we can't release this shit. And then they're like, well, we have already made the carts. And so that's why we're doing this.
Yeah.
It's less than half of a Zelda, so
I
don't know.
It's not bad.
I'm expecting something that's a little bit less than half as good. Yeah.
Exactly.
Everybody's 1-2 switch : it's less than half of Zelda.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
You think it's one of those situations where they're trying to sort of say, like, it's worth paying $70 for something that's actually good. Is that the argument they're trying to make?
Hey, this was $70 and this is $30. Look at the quality difference. This is a steal. The $70 is a steal here. I can't believe there's not even a trailer. God, this is beautiful. All right. Let's move on to email. Sean, you were going to read an email.
I was.
Like 40 minutes ago before everybody's 1-2 switch.
I was shocked to read it. All right.
It's not your fault because the deeper we go, the weirder it gets.
I just had to share it because I'm innocently looking at the front page of the website.
There is an article on
and I don't often see something that odd.
There is an article on the Nintendo UK page called "Upcoming Nintendo Switch Games June 2023" that came out literally yesterday. That does not list this game. They could have sat on it for a day, which makes me wonder if they even know this game exists. Are they going to log in this morning and go, what the fuck? Shit. All right, John, emails.
All right. Lemonade writes, Dear RFN, I'm interested to hear your thoughts on the future of Amiibo. When we do not know what their Switch successor is, and Nintendo have greatly slowed production of new Amiibo, are they going to be quietly discontinued at the end of the Switch? Or are there so many Amiibo out there now that they will at least support them on whatever hardware comes next? Every other company seems to have given up on the toys-to-life trend, but there are still new Amiibo on the horizon. We just got a new Link with Tears of the Kingdom, Pyra and Mithra are out next month, and Nintendo even recently announced Amiibo of Noah and Mio for Xenoblade 3. As an Amiibo fan, I hope they keep going with it. They are nice, high-quality figures at an affordable price.
So, Greg, you were talking about it before the show. The fact that there are Xenoblade 3 Amiibo is baffling.
That was the real shock, I've got to say, because there's some of these where it kind of feels like there's a few sort of things now, like the Smash Amiibo, which Pyra and Mithra are. You know, it just feels like it's like this grim obligation that they're following through on, you know, from like 10 years ago, basically. You know, like, well, I guess,
it's getting there,
more like 9, but, you know, like when they, you know, kind of, in terms of when they first actually launched, you know, Smash, 3DS and stuff with the, you know, kind of having Amiibo for all the characters and sort of promising that they would do Amiibo for each character and stuff. And then you've gone through, you know, all the DLC for Smash on 3DS and Wii U, and then on the new characters for Ultimate, and then all the DLC characters for Ultimate. You know, it just feels like it's this big, long follow through. So, you know, that is one thing. But then you've had like, okay, Skyward Sword HD is coming out. Here's the Zelda Loftwing figure to come with that at launch. Now we've got you know, Tears of the Kingdom and the new Link. Like, it's just, okay, but they're still going to do some product launches where it's like we want a figure to go with the product launch. So like that's still like an occasional thing. Super Mario 3D World, when it came out on Switch, was another one. We had the cat double pack of Mario and Peach, for instance. So, okay. But the Mio Noah one is really weird because it's going to be, I would assume, at least a year after Xenoblade 3 came out. The DLC's done now. Like, it's not, it's so belated. That really struck me as like, wow.
What's it going to even do?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, I do think what has happened in terms of part of the question is like, compatibility in the future and stuff. Like, it does feel like they're less bothered about like what it does than they've ever been. I mean, arguably they were never that bothered about it, but they had some ideas, including some, you know, fairly strange ones, like that relatively recent Loftwing Amiibo about, let's have something that's actually useful and make it specific to that Amiibo. You know, it's that's strange. But for the most part, it feels more like we're mostly just selling a figure here. You know, the idea of it being something that, you know, ties into the gameplay, the actual toys to life concept is kind of vestigial. You know, we're just kind of taking the opportunity to sell a figure. But yeah, for something, yeah, to do Amiibo for a game that, you know, like I said, would have been out for more than a year, I don't know when they're even going to start taking orders on that. You know, double pack for Xenoblade 3. And it's Xenoblade 3 as well. It's not a game that either has or be, you know, before release expected to sell, you know, 10 million plus units or anything, or even like SKUs that young or anything like that. Like, it's really, really strange.
Well, I actually think that it's skewing older is probably relevant. I think they're viewing these as collector's items.
Yeah, that's the only way you can make it make any kind of sense, really, isn't it?
And so, like that Pyra and Mithra one, somebody went in the NWR Discord when the pre-orders went live for like the last site we were waiting on to go live on them. And I don't own many Amiibo. I think I own 3 total. But that was one that I would be interested in, even though I didn't remember they were coming. And like, somebody announced, they're there. And I'm like, oh, cool. I'm in the middle of a meeting. Once this meeting's done, I'll pre-order them. The meeting was done 20 minutes later and they were gone. So like, we're probably dealing with incredibly limited quantities, which sucks because I would like to own that set.
I mean, another thing I would say has surprised me in a relatively pleasant sort of way, even though I can't sort of really availed myself of these sorts of things, is like, for instance, Kirby and Zelda. Like when you've had the launches of those games this year, that they've sort of had some kind of like reprint or restock of existing Amiibo in those lines. Made available, at least like through the My Nintendo kind of like official store over here. Which again, like it's more than I would have thought they'd be doing at this point. You know what I mean? Like to actually say, well, we're releasing new games that, kind of you do have some kind of Amiibo compatibility functionality. So we should like give people some sort of, again, probably quite limited numbers, but give them another chance to get some of these figures that have gone out of stock in the past. Like, so they've done more with them than I would have guessed, considering indeed the Toys to Life moment has long since passed, and obviously a lot of the sort of kind of impetus for that part of Nintendo's strategy back then was just it was something that they'd kind of built into the gamepad, the NFC communication, and it was just something they could do, it's something they could sell. It also was something that they could kind of, draw revenue from, while yes, it did, communicate with the Wii U, and they tried to tie it into the games. People who didn't own Wii U's, which was, just about everyone, could buy those figures and therefore give Nintendo money. And of course, they did extend, the compatibility to the 3DS with the new 3DS and that hockey puck attachment thing. Yeah, for the older models and stuff. Rather like Miiverse getting, moved over to basically anything that was like the fruits of their Wii U labor had to be moved somewhere else, lest it be, essentially
including
lost
games.
forever. So, it feels like, it had this original purpose that was kind of obviated relatively quickly. So the fact that they do almost anything with it at this stage is kind of like, to me, feels a bit strange, a bit vestigial. But the Xenoblade double pack just kind of takes the cake of just being like way out there, kind of off the map. So what that says about, in the future, I don't know. It feels like something that, could very easily be left behind, but they've already surprised me a little with their willingness to kind of hang on to it. So, maybe there may be future things yet, I guess. So
I'm browsing a site that's commonly used by hobbyists to buy chips, like not potato chips, like computer chips. And a lot of times you're buying directly from the factories in China for a lot of these. And I pulled up a couple different NFC communication devices, and a lot of them are about trying to do distance or levels of encryption or all kinds of stuff. None of that matters for Amiibo. You could put the cheapest fucking chip in the world in there because it's meant to be literally tapped. So as long as it's fast enough to read what's probably nothing more than a series of numbers, like, because ultimately all games like Breath of the Wild do when you tap an Amiibo. Like, I tapped the Mega Man Amiibo. Is there anything special in there for Mega Man? No, of course not. There's just a number that they know that's like, this is the ID for the Mega Man Amiibo, and they've made a thing that says, if someone taps this number, reward with these. And it's like, I got bananas and some rupees, I think. And that's it. Like, that's all that it takes. Like, the actual data on the thing is largely irrelevant. It's just a lookup reference. So they could use really cheap NFC chips. And I'm looking at a list right now. It says if I buy 25 of these, so buy 25 of these chips, I get them for basically $2 a pop, like $2.30, $2.35. And if you want to buy more than that, it says contact our sales, which means that, the percentage will keep coming down. So Nintendo, who's going to buy millions of these, can likely do a lot better than me buying 35 from my sofa. I'm just going to say they could probably pull a better deal. So the cost of including it's probably relatively cheap. Like, probably like befuddlingly cheap. And so the opportunity cost to continue to sell us plastic toys at a pretty good markup. I mean, the Pyramithra sculpts look really good.
No, it's kind of interesting with Lemonade sign off there in terms of they are nice, high quality figures at an affordable price. That's certainly much more true now than it was at the outset. You know, they seem to increase in quality relatively quickly. Like the first couple series of waves of Smash Brothers figures really kind of, had the biggest issues, and I think even some of those got kind of reprinted slightly better. But then you look at latter ones after that, and the increase in quality could be seen again. So it's I'm sure some people their opinions may vary on how high quality they think they are for the price. I'm no expert on figures of that scale or anything across different manufacturers or whatever, but it's hard to argue with the fact that they did, they got better.
So the other thing to keep in mind is the Pyramithra ones, I think they're 30 for the 2-pack. They're really nice. Now, of course, Nintendo doesn't get all of that 30 because they cut it with the retailer. I'm sure they make a tidy profit on them, but even if they're more or less just breaking even on the Amiibo, it's good PR with your retailers, because of course, as they've moved towards digital games, retailers are getting cut out of the most profitable section of buying and selling video games. But Nintendo still needs their partnership because people got to buy the console somewhere, and accessories and stuff like that. So having those is another thing retailers can put on their shelves to take up space, to kind of fill in the Nintendo section and to keep retailers happy. So there's a political value in them. There's also a marketing value in them. Like they're an additional thing to create buzz around the release of a game. Now, when you time them to be a year goddamn later than your game, they might not achieve that objective.
Like I said, that can only be considered its own pocket universe for this sort of thing. I mean, I will say
it's so weird.
There is a world of difference. I said, I wouldn't have been absolutely sure that they'd do a Link Amiibo for Tears of the Kingdom, because it has been winding down, obviously, but then equally, you've had one for Skyward Sword, so it was possible. But there is still a stark contrast between Breath of the Wild, where how many Amiibo released for that thing? I mean, good lord. I mean,
there was a big Guardian Amiibo.
There's a Guardian one. There's a Bokoblin. There's Link on a horse. There's Link with his bow. There's Zelda. There's all the champions who I think were in a box set outside of Japan, but were individual in Japan. And I wouldn't discount the possibility that there could be more, especially if you're willing to do Xenoblade a year later or whatever. But, it's Link. Right. This is a lot more modest than that was.
And they've never really done a bunch of Mario Kart Amiibo, which feels inevitable. I think
that is astonishing, really, isn't it? I mean, I know there's Mario Kart, Hot Wheels and stuff, there's loads of Mario Kart stuff, but not, I mean, and, they've had Amiibo functionality in there, obviously, if you would go all the way back to when Mario Kart 8 came out the first time with, the little Mii suits and whatever, but that is strange.
The thing is, including an Amiibo chip, the NFC chip, the actual emitter, not the reader, is dirt cheap, massively, massively cheap. So continuing to put them in things and being able to increase the value of them, the value proposition of the product more than you've increased the cost, the effect it has on cost by being Amiibo outstrips the effect it has by the cost on the price. The other way around, the cost on the price affects the cost of manufacture. So it's probably a quick way to increase the revenue on a piece of marketing, a piece of product. It might also be, because they have the toys licensed out, different regions to different people, but Jack specific here in the U.S. There's obviously some kind of exception to those terms around Amiibo.
Yeah, it's kind of its own carve out because it's Toys to Life, it's interacting with gameplay or whatever. But for licensing terms, even if you've kind of sunsetted that being the raison d'etre, it's still kind of a useful carve out. So we can still do these deals with these people over here and have our own thing in this lane that we've originally made for the Toys to Life angle.
This could literally be a mechanism that allows them to produce toys because, no. These are video game accessories. In the most like thinly veiled sense of the word, yes. But I'm sure whatever contract they had carved out before has already got those exceptions written in it, and they're just going to keep rolling that over. So there's a number of like political reasons why continuing to support Amiibo is valuable, and continuing to beyond support, produce Amiibo is valuable. But I think also the cost of doing it is so low that it's probably worth continuing to support them just because. Like, even if you don't have any grand plans for them, any great designs, like leaving that option open to you is of so little effect. Like, if you're talking about, you know, let's say I can get them for $2. Let's say Nintendo can get them for $1.50. $1.50 per controller. Well, controllers are already like $70. Like, okay, whatever, $1.50. We can eat that cost. No problem. It's relatively straightforward for them to continue to support them, and it is like we talked about it with the Wii U. It's a check mark. They can say, and this new system supports Amiibo. Honestly, I'm surprised more things don't support Amiibo. I'm surprised they haven't figured out how to do Amiibo on phones yet. Like, it just seems like it's so easy for them to get a win out of these things and to continue to have value on those products. They continue to release them in stores, even if they're releasing them in incredibly limited quantity. It's a marketing thing.
Yeah, I know. I mean, you've seen in the past, obviously, like those, and it seems really funny. You know, these years later, after New Horizons on Switch was so big, but you know, we've seen some of the perils in terms of we just released like every Animal Crossing character in tandem with a game that was a bomb, even relative to the bomb of a system that Wii U was with the board Animal Crossing board game thing. So, you know, like the overdoing it, you know, and you end up with a bunch of product that the retailers can't sell, and then, you know, you're not making them happy, you're pissing them off. We've seen how it kind of went a bit sour at times, but it's a much more reserved, as I sort of mentioned already, with the contrast with the Zelda games, you know, that isn't going to happen again. You're not just going to have some enormous range of things coming out at once for one franchise, even if it is a big seller like Animal Crossing was.
I almost wonder if the Zelda stuff was because they knew people would be picking up Zelda at midnight launches for the console, and like when I picked up mine, those really opulent Amiibo were on display right in the doorway in the line you had to walk past to pick up your pre-order. I almost wonder if they were just like they were literally vanity products to try to tempt people at these moments where they knew everybody was going to be going to a store physically rather than ordering online. And they could just they're already spending a bunch of money. Their wallets are already open.
Yep.
Let's see if we can get them to buy this vanity thing.
Gotta give the retailers some attach items.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, it could literally have been that. Like, hey, we're only going to send you like 4 per store.
Yeah.
But the idea is that when you do your launch event, you're going to have them out there, and you're going to find you've got people who waited around to pre-order a console and the system just to play this fucking game.
Well, I mean, I think they'll stick around just as almost an olive branch to retailers. Like, yeah, we know that you're basically cut out of the equation now that people just like, you know, download their games, but you know, we still got something for you to stock on your shelves.
Yeah, especially if they let the retailers get good margin on them. Like if Nintendo basically is selling them at a break even, then I know I've told these before, but Greg, you spoke about the Animal Crossing Amiibo. There's so many waves of Animal Crossing Amiibo stuff. It's kind of wild. So Happy Home Designer, I've talked about it on the show when I basically was wandering around Toys R Us's when they were basically doing the buy one get 2 free deal for the Animal Crossing Amiibo, and I was buying them to send them to who wanted them, and I ended up sending 12 Animal Crossing Amiibo. And I was going to like different Toys R Us's before they closed. I was in Boston for work, and I went to the suburban Boston, so I went to one and got like a bunch. Oh no, I was in suburban Seattle. Was it Seattle? I might have been Seattle, the Seattle trip. And I got a bunch, and then I went home, and they had a few more. And just at one point, I was in line, and I had 2 because they didn't have a third one I hadn't already picked up. And the person at the register is like, you get one more of these. And I'm like, I know. I don't want any more. I'm like, but it's free. And I'm like, no, I don't want any more. I was like, no, don't give me the crap I know you're trying to get it off the shelf. I'm not taking it. I will not take it. I know this is a dying retail establishment and that section needs to be liquidated. I refuse to take another red. It's not happening. Stop asking. It's like, oh my God. But they also had
that's what I do wonder about the Zelda stuff again, because obviously the game was ultimately delayed and, taken away from Wii U exclusivity. How much of the Amiibo plan was kind of, drawn up a little bit earlier when clearly they still had these ideas of, these huge ranges all at once for one franchise that, even by the time that it actually happened, maybe they wouldn't have drawn it up like that again. But, they just, as we've already sort of mentioned with, everybody's 1-2 switch or various other things. Sometimes these wheels are in motion for some time, and then, things happen. And it's like, okay, well, this isn't how we originally drew it up, but what's the best way, forward? And they kind of just followed through on having this enormous number. So, because the economics of it are different with the US because of the relatively high cost of distribution, which is one reason why you get a lot more of like the champions are separate figures in Japan, but they're one box set in America.
Right. It's much easier to ship a box set.
Yeah, so like that's kind of reflected one sort of reality, but it does kind of feel like that was the last time that you got that kind of real, a big kind of range of figures all at once, except for obviously you had subsequent Smash lines, but again, some of that was just follow through. A lot of it is follow through. So
it really is. I mean, the Mario, there was a wave of Mario Amiibo that they did. And then they went back to the Animal Crossing well, which is amazing for Happy House Arrest, Happy Home Designer.
Was that the cards?
They had the Amiibo cards, and they still make Amiibo cards for Animal Crossing, like constantly. Now, when we were in Japan, they had an exclusive set that was tied to, I want to say it was tied to 7-Eleven. So it was 7-Eleven branded Amiibo Animal Crossing cards that got you things in Happy Home Designer. They didn't work out on non-Japanese copies of the game, though. They region locked the fucking Amiibo cards because the 7-Eleven deal was only for them. But you could only buy them at 7-Eleven, which meant we wandered around many Tokyo 7-Elevens go, do you have Animal Crossing? Animal Crossing card Doko desu ka? And they're like, no, we don't have any. Damn it. Fine. But there was another wave of that, another story I've told on the show about the Sanrio ones that finally came to the West at Target exclusives, and they fucked up the pre-order system. So people were able to just walk in and buy them when actually they were pre-orders. They've done reissues of those. So I actually went to Target on launch day and bought one for my significant other who needed a set because that was the thing they wanted. Okay, fine. And there were people waiting in line to buy fucking cards for Animal Crossing when the game barely uses them. It's bizarre. Now, they've reprinted those Sanrio ones a million times since then. They're always on display now. But they seem to sell because it's not like it's the same card. Like, they'll come off the rack and then they'll come back a few days later or a few weeks later and say, oh, they're back. So maybe the cards continue to be a thing. I don't know. Like, they seem to be pretty committed to it, even if they're not like the era of creating the Mario series committed. So I don't see any reason to think these are going anywhere.
That was another restock as well with the movie in that case that we had over like the Super Mario line of not the whole one because I don't think stuff like Waluigi, Wario, Rosalina like that, but just people who were in the movie basically. Right. Mario, Luigi, Peach, Bowser. DK, presumably, as well. Those got research. So, I continue to be somewhat surprised by their ongoing willingness to kind of do some of those things. I guess, that in that particular case is, well, we may as well do that considering we haven't got a game to tie in with the movie. We may as well let people buy our Amiibo again. But I think it leaves the door open. for them to keep doing it, but at the same time, the level of commitment is low enough that it wouldn't shock you if they just dropped it either.
Yeah, but I do think, just for the purposes of having the path open to them, there's no reason not to put the chip in the controllers. Like, it's the cost is so low, and even if they decide to do nothing with it, they could go back to that well, and they're never going to be able to sell you controllers just to get you to, I'll sell you a new controller. This one supports Amiibo. There ain't no chance. If they want to be able to ever do Amiibo on the successor system, it's got to be in there from day one. So that's my read. Because that hockey puck, I bet those things. I bet it's like the Switch Pad Pro for the DS XL, or 3DS XL. Like
the Circle Pad Pro, yeah.
The Circle Pad Pro for the XL, that's like super niche.
The larger salad tray thing, yeah.
Yeah. Like, I bet those pucks are probably either like worth $1 or worth $1 million because there's not that many of them. It's that DS keyboard for that Pokemon Teaches typing thing is worth a boatload of cash now. And Nintendo was basically giving them away in Europe.
Yeah, they must. I mean, I guess it is a risk when it's something that popular. They oversupplied it, so that was really cheap for a while. But then, I guess at a certain point, it's come back around the other way.
The rarity, because they didn't make that many, but they apparently still made too many.
But still too many, exactly.
And then rarity kicked in, so it's one of those things where I could see them continuing just to go with it. Let's do one more email. I'll read it. Reg McFly writes, Dear RFN, I made a flippant remark on the Discord about having had experiences of having driven on both left and right side of the road in my youth due to living in different places. I just thought it was due to youth recklessness. This got me thinking about cultural differences. I know the X and O buttons on the PlayStation were one of the ones of confusion at the time, but I'm really keen to know about Nintendo differences. Aside from the SNES changes of button colors, I can't think of many changes, and with Rusty's Real Deal Baseball not making to the UK possibly due to gambling laws, or with face-touching element of Fire Emblem being conveniently sidelined. But can you think of any other cultural changes specifically in Nintendo-published games, or times that Nintendo said no to one culture or another? Love the show. John Streak is real.
Yes, that's a smart man.
Which ends this week, by the way.
Exquisitely.
But that's the whole thing. It's like if you want to be a glass half empty guy, that's fine. I'm a glass half full guy.
I should have read this on a week when you weren't here, so I could say no, it's not.
One streak ends, another streak begins. James,
it's not on the episodes you're not on.
Well, no, but I mean, trust me, I'll be back. But yeah,
is that a threat?
It's a threat and a promise.
The guy at the police station that gets driven into at the beginning of the onslaught of Terminator.
Exactly. The one thing I will say is box art is a notable one.
Oh yeah. Besides Angry Kirby.
Yeah, I mean Angry Kirby is the poster child for cultural differences.
I mean, they stole his fucking cake. He should be angry. Mm-hmm. Like, Japan's got it wrong.
An American would say that, James.
Look.
What, are you shining up your AR-15 over there while you're saying that?
No.
I mean, ready to go to the shooting range?
First off,
I'm not going to tread on you, James. Just chill out.
Molon Labe, motherfucker. I think of it this way. Like, if you telling me you could go to Sapporo and just walk into a fucking cafe and just yank somebody's 5-tier strawberry cake off their plate, and they're not going to give you an upset look? No, you're getting an upset look.
If you stole one of those lovely cakes from the Kirby pop-up cafe shop or whatever, I mean, I'm pretty sure anyone would look pissed.
Yeah, like, it's chiffon. It's got a nice, like, pink fondant layer on it.
It's chiffon.
They're gonna look mad, John. God. They're gonna be mad. So no,
chiffon does bring out the crazies, definitely.
Yes, it does. You're right. Which I now have to write that one down too. Thank you. The problem is that, like, Japan's got it twisted, not the U.S. one. The U.S. one's right.
Yeah. So you're saying that Japan really is kind of sanitized.
Sanitized Kirby, definitely.
They're in denial. They're in denial.
Sanitized Kirby. Yes. They deliberately took the edge off of Kirby Whereas in America, we're showing Kirby how he really is.
Look, he doesn't have any edges, but that doesn't mean he's not edgy.
Wow. This is just. I apologize.
No. I think we've exposed a fissure that has long been ascribed to the American branch having an error, but in fact, they're the only ones who truly recognize the absolute sin of the cake theft and the emotional impact it would have on someone having the one thing they desire to do, eat this piece of cake, disrupted by a ne'er-do-well.
Now, finally, an accurate portrayal of the rage inside Kirby.
The rage inside us all, John.
That's true.
You just don't mess with a man's cake. It's not that complicated. If
hands off the lemon chiffon.
I don't know. Kirby strikes me as more of a strawberry.
Yeah, probably.
But like, if I stole your cake from you, would you be upset?
Probably.
Yeah. See.
I probably would. I would at least be inquisitive as to, sir, why are you absconding with my cake?
And what if my response was to pull out a giant mallet and hit you with it as I ran off? Because that's basically what DDD does every single time.
Yeah, that would probably be the icing on the cake in this situation, as it were.
Yeah, exactly. So I think this is a situation where regional differences are representing one culture's understanding of reality and another one's failure to accept it.
Yeah, I think of a few linguistic ones over the years. one that came up with Kirby was Epic Yarn with "It Feels Like Pants," which has a sort of slightly different connotation in the UK than it does in the US.
What about Mr. Wasn't it Mr. Pants was the rare game?
It's Mr. Pants. Yeah, but he's wearing underwear because that's what the term means.
Yeah,
UK English.
It's obviously it's underpants, but the under bit gets kind of cut off over here. Right. So when we say pants, we mean underpants. Right. Whereas rather than trousers. But the funny thing about that bit in Kirby's Epic Yarn is that it's like narrated by someone with a British accent. So it sort of heightens the weirdness of it, It's like, I'm sure not just me, but pretty much every British person alive has, seen enough American media to be used to them saying pants and meaning trousers. But it's a little bit more weird when it's someone with a British sounding voice doing it. So there was that.
That's another one of those, like, it became an internal NWR meme for a really long time. Because there were enough British people on the roster at that point to be like, this is so weird. I don't like this.
Oh, and also, it's also kind of like it was kind of a gentle way of saying something was rubbish as well. Like, it's a bit pants is like a way of saying it's crap, basically. So again, it did strike weirdly, but obviously it wasn't something they were ever going to be motivated to change. But there was one example where I think they did change, like, subsequent pressings of this game, because it was pre-patch. But there was the Super Paper Mario thing, where I think the K-Mech had some lines where he referred to something being spastic, which basically, in this country, sadly, that word became a slur against people that had learning disabilities and so forth. So there was a charity that had that in its name, that had to change the name because it had just become so toxic. People had made it so toxic. So then when it appears, in this different context, because it's, an American localization of a Japanese script, I'm sure the American localizers, had no idea that when people would see it in the UK, it would look at it and go, oh, like, what's that there for? That's a terrible word. We don't try, we avoid using that now. And I think they maybe did, like, again, subsequent pressings of that maybe had it changed. I'm not sure though, because obviously it was a long, long time ago. I think, like, it, came out a few months later in Europe anyway, because obviously that's a game with quite a lot of text in it. So, it was probably a pretty heavy localization. And I guess, they probably wanted to get it out as quickly as possible in, other territories because it was the early days of Wii. You're just trying to get everything you can out there because it was originally a GameCube game that was ported over to Wii. But yeah, even with those few extra months, they didn't catch that. And then, it kind of became, it got flagged up online and they had to do something, at least issue a statement or so, I forget.
I think we've seen it with, we made jokes about the era of Nintendo of Europe's literal naming, where it's just like, we're just going to literally translate whatever Japan named this game, even when the name doesn't make any goddamn sense.
Yeah, that's not really so much like a cultural difference in terms of, the actual market in question, is it? It's more of a cultural difference of that branch of like, okay, well, what's our philosophy here? How do we approach these things?
I have a theory on it, though, that might make it relevant, where it's not a cultural US-UK difference, but US-Europe difference, where in Europe, Nintendo of Europe is marketing in, I think it's about 12 countries with about, 9, 10, 11 different languages, depending on how you want to split it.
You want something that works across the whole bunch.
Or just doesn't work at all. And then it's like,
it works equally well or poorly. Right.
So, a lot of the names that came out of Japan were just word salad. And in some cases, it felt like they were just literally describing the game. Whereas Nintendo of America would give them some kind of punchy name out on their own. And there was obviously Nintendo of Europe could have just taken the NOA name and just been like, this is fine. This is a good culturally marketable name that they've come up with. We already control the trademarks to it. Because it's not like they didn't register those trademarks in Europe as well, just in case. But they either, because they were concerned about the cultural reality of having to market in a bunch of very distinct national identity cultures that they're going to be marketing in, or just because maybe the way that they approach marketing was different. Like, whereas NOA's like, no, punchy name, let's go. Maybe their marketing philosophy was more like, well, no, the literal name is good. We want people to know what the game is. Something internally, and probably also externally, was motivating them to behave in a very different way than their counterparts across the Atlantic Ocean. But we also saw that with the games that NOE went rogue and localized. Like, you could say, well, obviously they should have localized Xenoblade, and NOA fucked up. Yeah, NOA fucked up. NOA fucked up with what was the one that wasn't The Last Story.
Oh yeah,
that was another one. The one about eating organs,
Pandora's Tower.
Yeah, making a vegan suffering eat the flesh of monsters. That one, that game's kind of average. It would have been fine either way, but that doesn't excuse the decision to localize Disaster Day of Crisis, which is a bad game.
The thing is, though, there wasn't was there that much localization that kind of needed to happen with that? Because the voice acting wasn't
it was already in English.
Because obviously, the whole thing is a pastiche of 90s action disaster movies, right, as we've said many times. So it would only, even, for the Japanese audience, it made sense that those movies, had English voices, so this does too. That's the things we're imitating. So, yeah, that part of it. And beyond that, the text would have been relatively modest, wouldn't it?
There's a lot of it, but it's very dumb and thin. So what was the catalyst where and I was like, no, this is this game. This is the one. And always looking at it going like, to fuck. Reggie explicitly said in an interview that game is bad. He's talking about a game his own company is publishing, and he's like, no, we're not releasing it. It's bad. It's like, what?
I think there was more. I think it was more to it than just quality as well. I think they may have been looking at it thinking, this was the sort of game. Obviously you've just had this was sort of for everybody's 1-2 switch, but say for instance, the original 1-2 switch, right? You had that as a product in development and it was intended for the launch, right? But for some reason it went wrong. And right. If it's going to come out, it'll be a year after launch. It kind of becomes pointless, doesn't it? You know what I mean? That is such a first, so many months of a system product. And I think, Disaster was a bit like that in terms of it was so kind of like, what could we do with this thing? Well, we could shoot with the pointer, so we've got light gun stuff. We could do like motion gesture driving bits. We could do, it's so predicated on the novelty factor of Wii and the controllers that once that, presumably because it didn't come out in Japan that early, did it? It was, already several months, maybe more than a year, I forget, into the Wii's life by the time it came out in Japan, that it's kind of like, it's missed its moment. Even, if it were better, it's kind of missed its moment, so maybe there's no point in bringing it out. I think that probably helped doom it in North America, but it only makes it a bit more odd that it came out in Europe, because by the time it came out in Europe, I believe it was autumn of 2008. So getting on for 2 years in, it's really kind of missed it at that point, hasn't it?
Yeah. Animal Crossing is one that's had a lot of these. So New Leaf had different holidays between Europe and North America. Now, it's not usually like a big difference. Like, I think it was like Groundhog Day, Labor Day, maybe some other ones. And then Europe had things like Naughty or Nice Day. Just some things to kind of fill in the gap. But one of the Animal Crossing games, I can't remember which one, I want to say did the Australian regions and actually did flip the seasons. Because of course they have the opposite seasons of
well, there was the whole thing of like Australia actually had the GameCube Animal Crossing like way in advance of Europe, right, because of, again, huge localization for Europe, much less so for, an English speaking country like Australia. But normally, because of the PAL, the synergy of like, well, Australia might be all the way on the other side of the world, a different hemisphere, but it does use PAL like Europe does, so it kind of got attached to that part of the Nintendo operation. It was a sort of outgrowth of the PAL, kind of business. And so most of the time, if something was going to get held up by how long it would take to localize for all the, continental Europe, they would still have to wait just as long. But for Animal Crossing, I think they did get it sooner. Which is nice, before, obviously there's so much more nowadays, even compared to what I was on about earlier with Super Paper Mario, like so much is done to make things global, even Pokemon has gone global, which is, I'm sure that is an incredible amount of work and coordination.
Oh my God. Especially because a lot of the names are puns.
So much of it is online, online, the presence of online and social media has put a lot of pressure to synchronize and harmonize all of these things, hasn't it? Like whether it's, the piracy angle, of online has pressured everything to kind of, have release at pretty much the same time. Then there's the kind of, the search engine discoverability aspect of like, no, don't have different titles because, we want it to be more discoverable. We want it to be the same. Everyone's looking for the same thing. Some of those things that came up with, when NOE started to actually, be more active, have kind of bent back around again to like, no, we need to make this consistent because, we want everybody to be looking for the same thing, basically. So it's, I feel like the cultural differences kind of thing has changed, is definitely kind of softened a bit because everybody's kind of more like aware of each. It's less siloed now. The cultural differences are, I think there's a bit less fear of like, oh, well, what the hell are they talking about? I've never heard that word in my life. It's like, come on.
People can learn about that stuff more quickly and readily. And,
exactly.
And by the same token, it's much easier to compare things now. You can talk to somebody in Japan and they can say, oh, hey, well, I just got the game tonight and this is what I see. And, you can do that kind of real-time comparison sort of thing. So it's like, so there's more pressure, but I think you're right. It's like, you don't have to worry as much about one culture not having any idea what something means in another culture.
I mean, the other thing is a lot of Nintendo's games now on the eShop are the same SKU regardless of what region you buy it in. It's the same game. It's just looking at a setting and going, this is what I'm going to flip it to.
Yep.
So that limits the amount they're probably doing this. I had a suspicion about a game that would have a lot of it. And so I went and looked it up, and I was right. The Tomodachi games, because so much about them is around the interactions of people, and gestures and cultural components are going to be different in different regions. So as an example, when characters make friends in the Korean and Japanese release, or they make up from a fight, they bow to each other, and they don't do that in the Western releases. There's gestures around like how people show that they're embarrassed are depicted differently in the media in different cultures, so they've done different things there for different regions. Some of the dialogue is different. There's a running gag in anime about when you get too close to somebody and how they blush that's been taken out because they were concerned it would look like wounds, so they changed it to just like just like regular blushing. I remember there was some stuff around same-sex relationships that was kind of handled poorly in some regions more than others. In the Japanese version of one of the Tomodachi Life games, characters can confess to married me's. That was not included in the Western version of the game. Which is amazing. That's probably a bug fix more than anything, but you would think somebody would have caught it, and that might make it the ultimate cultural representation, that somebody didn't go, yo, wait, what? Why? There's let's see, hold on, let me look for this one. There's a bunch of like how things are depicted in anime that just don't come through. Like the idea that when somebody's indecisive, they're surrounded by gray clouds. That wouldn't culturally translate. So that just got yanked out of the Japanese version. Or it was in the Japanese version and got yanked out on the other ones. And there's a bunch of stuff that's just like, we've made multiple adjustments over time, but
that's the thing. I mean, in general, like, there's been a lot more kind of willingness to like leave things in that are distinctly Japanese, that right. You're born out of kind of conventions or tropes in Japanese media, like, because I think again there's more expectation that people know those because Japanese media is more accessible to everyone than it's ever been.
It is one of their biggest culture or one of their biggest exports right now. So it's very available and mainstreamized in ways that it wasn't even 15 years ago. Here's a good one. In the Japanese version, you can pick your blood type, which is a very Japanese thing.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's just Street Fighter, right?
Yeah,
like
exactly.
It's like when you see the bios on Street Fighter 2, and it's like, do I need to know? I mean,
it's one of those like dumb matchmaking things. Like, they've got compatible relationship blood types. I'm not donating them a fucking kidney. I want to go out on a date. Jesus Christ. He's O negative. It's just not going to work between us.
It seems like it's
blood transfusion.
Yeah, it's not transfusion.
It kind of just seems like somebody taking the term vital statistics a bit too literally.
I need to check your cholesterol level to see if we're compatible.
Now, with the Rusty's Real Deal Baseball thing, which I grieve because, as I say, even though I have a Japanese 2DS, like that's
a very different game there too.
That wasn't going to work, really to capture the spirit of the game. I would have preferred a localized version. I didn't have a North American 3DS or 2DS, any kind of that hardware to my name. So I missed out, when the eShop went down. But, I wasn't thinking that was really an outright, like, gambling thing so much as it was like EU regulations about digital purchases, perhaps, this whole concept of like, the in-game haggling over the price. I'm not sure that really kind of, obviously we already, kind of covered this in an email not that long ago about, kind of EU directives on pricing, being, different to what's out there in the US. And I always imagined it was probably more that, this idea of like, well, you can pay less, but you've got to, sort of play the game better to pay less. I can't imagine that's something they ever wanted to have to explain to the European Commission. You know what I mean?
Oh my God. Just having to go talk to some EU regulator, be like, no. Everybody has access to this price. They just have to play better. children have to just play better. Yeah, that's going to go over great.
Yeah, that would be my guess. I know obviously there has been coverage about, EU possibly look at certain countries inside Europe specifically, even if maybe getting ahead of a Europe-wide directive, considering loot boxes gambling and maybe trying to regulate that. But I think that, I have no idea if that could have been a factor with Rusty. But I just would have thought the pricing stuff would have been a problem before you even get to that. So
yeah, but even then, like the rule there has been around. Like you have to know what you're getting, and you knew what you were getting with Rusty. I think the issue is largely focused on baseball just wasn't a thing in Europe.
Well, I know, but obviously baseball's not hugely popular in Europe. Well, it's more popular in some countries than others. It's not it's not a monocultural thing. As a continent, but. Obviously we get the show and stuff like that, but localizing it would have been a bit of its own challenge as well, because it seems to me that so much of the value in that game is the personality of Rusty and this weird plight that he has. That would have been non-trivial as well. You add that to some of the other woes, and it's just maybe it wasn't one thing, but it's an accumulation of things that just says it's too much trouble.
And a big part of that game, though, is also selling on the nostalgia of learning, of playing baseball when you're very young. Like a lot of the activities you're doing it mimic the kind of drills that you would do playing Little League. Mm. So there is a cultural component that would probably be missing, even though you're right. Baseball is a thing in some countries in Europe, more so than others, but it weirdly doing probably better now than it was then, but it's still, there's just so much with Rusty, and you're right. Dealing with European regulators probably wasn't something Nintendo really wanted to have to try to do.
Well, is this something that, again, if it was, it was a weird experiment of a game, and again, born of this time, as we've already kind of alluded to with Amiibo and everything, when Nintendo was more willing to try stuff because they had to, because their kind of core business was not doing so well. And this whole thing of mobile games and free to play games, they're coming for your lunch and whatever. But it's not, it was a little kind of experiment. It's not something you're really going to say yes, let's if you'll forgive the phrase, go to bat for this with regulators. You know what I mean? If it was some core plank of your whole corporate strategy, maybe you would. But for this kind of experimental thing on the side, it's getting more trouble than it's worth.
Yeah, it's just explaining, even in the US, them explaining well, you can negotiate for a better price. It sounds really aggressively what the fuck's wrong with you? But I'm gonna tell you right now, that game does not want you to pay more than the bottom price. Because if you try to, there's a negotiator helper I don't know, I think you can take more.
There was some. They had the bunny thing, the badge arcade, that was getting a bit to the kind of the gambling element, or some of these other the kind of haggling with the bunny a little bit that. I'm kind of surprised they were willing to risk some stuff with that in Europe. But I don't know if they made any changes to it, or they might. I think there may have been something, but I forget the specifics.
Mm. I never spent any money in it, but I was able to get a lot of badges.
Absolutely not. But just in terms of having it running, I assume they had to be careful. They wouldn't want to run afoul of any kind of directives or anything, but also just the risk of the bad PR is the other part of it. Whether you're actually in contravention is one thing, but to be perceived to be, and it's, look, they're predatory, and their whole business model is about, they're getting kids, hooked on their games at an early age, and all. You don't want to be anywhere near that, ideally.
You wouldn't want to have gambling in Europe. No, it's just unacceptable.
Well, it was the good old days, though, of that. Speaking of cultural differences, that was a big one in the old, of just gambling had such a different connotation in America. Where we had this much more illicit kind of connotation to it. But we're well past that now. I can't believe you're watching the Stanley Cup finals, and they're really eager to tell you about what the bloody in-play is.
I don't know. I like the old days of like somebody like Brent Musburger would make comments like, "Boy, there's going to be some people up late tonight who aren't going to like to see that score."
Yeah.
It's like very opaque references.
They had to be, right? Because it's like, no, that doesn't happen. We can't talk about that. Where and how quickly, and then we had the sort of fig leaf era of like, your DraftKings. Oh, it's a game of skill. It's not gambling. Right. I don't know what you're on about.
No.
To like, DraftKings just does straight up gambling. Obviously now.
Right now it's the biggest sports book in the U.S.
You know what's fucking awesome? Gambling, actually, though. Actual gambling,
real gambling, not drafts.
That quickly is a cultural divide that's kind of fallen.
So.
And a lot of them, it does feel like a lot of them have fallen or softened, because it's just like, I mean, speaking of, your baseball might not be that popular in the UK, where you have no idea how common the phrase "step up to the plate" has become over here. I really do. When I look at the people and listen to them talking, I'm like, do you know where that comes from? Because I do, but I doubt you do. I really exactly. There is almost no possibility you have any concept of what this plate is and why anyone is stepping up to it. But they use it a lot because that online basically. We've been inundated with American media for decades, but social media has really fast-tracked, American idioms and, kind of versions of sayings and meanings at a far greater pace than television ever did.
One thing I've noticed when I'm consuming content from content creators, especially people who stream and stuff, is that Western Europeans who grew up with English around them, grew up, learning English. It's not necessarily as their first language. A lot of times it's their second. Have very much, even more so than people who are a little bit older, who are closer to my age, very much sound like Americans when they talk. Like, not like, oh, they're using American terminology or stuff, like versus UK. Like, they sound like Americans. Mm-hmm. Like there's like a slight inflection there where you might go like, huh. But if you just kind of casually met them, you might not process that they have a European accent. And the reason is not just because they've been consuming American media, but because they've made friends on the internet growing up and they were speaking directly to Americans vocally, rather than just, so the back and forth was also being done in that inflection. So that's the accent they've picked up. And so there's a little hint of it there. Like there's a content creator whose content I see sometimes who's Norwegian, and there's nothing Norwegian in his voice when he's speaking English. It sounds like somebody, like I would say somebody from middle American accent with a head cold. But in Norwegian, absolutely you can hear everything. And it's just because that's how he didn't learn English from other Norwegian people. He learned English from Americans. He didn't learn it in school, where they would pick up the accent from the teacher and stuff. They've learned or from his classmates. He learned it talking to people who this is their native language, and so it sounds that way.
I'm not sure how many people learn languages at school anyway.
Well, that's true.
I mean, you get the basis, but it's not really usually enough. I don't know about... I guess maybe I shouldn't talk about Europe, but over here, the courses in English that we got were not sufficient. You had to supplement that.
Oh
with
yeah, totally.
TV and
I'd say the same thing about French. I didn't.
But
with the not that I went really deep with it, but even into high school, I wouldn't. I knew no French really.
If your conversation practice though wasn't with other people learning the language, who have a similar accent to you, but was with people who speak English as their native language in a very specific way with a very specific accent.
Yeah.
Like that's going to, that's how accents form. Like that's why my accent is different than my parents' accent.
Well, but that even happens, not even speaking a foreign language, around different groups of friends. Like you adopt how those people speak.
Oh,
their slang, their inflections, how they say words. Like after you hang out with people for a while, you start speaking like them.
And mine's very permeable. I have family that has Virginia's a weird accent zone anyway, but I have people who have, I have a fairly mid-Atlantic accent, but I have people who have much deeper Southern accents in my family because it's not regional here. It's literally like community based. And when I'm around them, it comes out a lot thicker. Like it's very thick. I know Johnny's mentioned the same thing. When he goes back home, his accent comes flying back in because it's just there. And your back and forth community that you speak with sort of softens it out and sort of, sands down the differences. And so if you're constantly interacting with people who, this is their native language, and it's effectively like an immersion situation in that case.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're getting a little bit sidetracked here.
Yes.
But I just want to say that if Reg McFly wants examples of games, big changes in localization, the website legendsoflocalization.com has a lot of articles, a lot of comparisons between the original Japanese and what we ended up with NOA. Lots of examples where, Nintendo was kind of forcing changes in games that they were not publishing, but others, there are a few games like Earthbound, like there's a sequence where Ness is naked and he's got pajamas on in the localization. Lots of examples like that. Like it's references to corporal punishment in Earthbound were kind of softened to instead of getting spanked or paddled 100 times, Pokey's saying like I'm gonna get it, when my dad comes back. So like tons and tons of changes.
Yeah, you can't make jokes about a kid getting beaten. For whatever reason, the West just isn't ready for that kind of edgy humor.
Yeah.
I do want to point out that the face touching isn't completely removed from that Fire Emblem game. It's just been accessible less ways. I don't know. It's weird. It's still in there, like when you get married, I think. I don't know. It's dumb. Like removing it was kind of silly, but it was dumb. I mean, this also came up with Xenoblade X, where they're like, no, you can't put Lyn in a lot of clothes. And also, if you're making a female character, you don't get to have the breast size slider, which was a thing in the Japanese version of Xenoblade X. They just took it out in the West, like, nope, that's going out. Pulling that out, that needs to leave. Why that's the only slider in the game, I'm not gonna follow up with that, but it's definitely in there, the Japanese version.
They replaced it with a check mark that's just like yes.
No,
it's
just not a setting. Okay. It's like you pick a body style, male or female body style, and that's it. That's the play. It's so weird. It's just like we put one slider on the body, and that's the one. You can adjust height and stuff, but that's it. That's the one. It's like, okay, cool, I guess. Thanks, Xenoblade X, you weird ass fucking game. All right, we're going to take a break here. We'll take a break. It's break time. When we come back, we'll do some new business. So remember, emails go to rfn@nintendoworldreport.com. Music.
Smooth.
So I'm going to start it out. Who has non-Zelda new business?
I can have non-Zelda new business.
Would you like to have non-Zelda new business?
Sure.
Okay, Guillaume, hit us with some non-Zelda new business.
Yeah, so I have been playing a little bit of Cruis'n Blast, a game that came out a few years ago now. I've always been kind of curious about it. I was waiting for it to go down in price because I knew it was an arcade game at its core, and that's not necessarily the most, doesn't necessarily last, It can be fun initially, and then you kind of get sick of it. But I had heard enough good things about it that I was always interested in picking it up eventually. I gotta say, though, its arcade roots are still more pronounced than I expected. Like I mean,
it's made by Raw Thrills.
Right, I know that doesn't really mean anything to me because I don't have arcades around here, but I'm assuming that they make a lot of games.
Yeah, that their thing is arcade. Then their thing isn't just arcade games; it's like arcade games you sit down in or stuff like that.
Right. So, so Cruis'n Blast, it's just like this very arcade racer. You've got various like if it is, I don't know, like if the last Cruis'n game you played was Cruis'n USA on the Nintendo 64, you might be, I guess, surprised at how that series has evolved. I think that just got more and more bonkers as the series went on. So, I
seem to recall Greg mentioning a dinosaur.
Yeah, there is a dinosaur. There are several dinosaurs, even. But yeah, so basically, I think that the original arcade game has 5 or 6 tracks at most, because this was going to be a kind of a jazzed up console port. They're like, yeah, like now this has nearly 30 over the top tracks, except that basically they're all still the same tracks from the arcade game. It's just that they added like a weird coat of paint on them. But you're kind of always racing through the same tracks. It's just that something might have changed.
It's the variance, isn't it? Yeah, really. Yeah. Rather than like I don't know how much is entirely novel about the extra stuff, but it's. Well, I'm sure it helps, but you can
names
see
of the tours.
Padding of it.
Yeah, the names of the tours give you an idea of what changed. So there's the night tour. So you race through the tracks at night. Escape tour, that doesn't really mean anything, but I think it's the one where like helicopters are shooting stuff all around you at all times. Storm tour, so you've got extreme weather events, I suppose, going on. If you're feeling nostalgic for Disaster the Crisis, I suppose. Chopper tour. No, okay, that would be the helicopter one. So
Escape is the one with the cop cars coming after you, right?
It might be, but you don't see them much because they're behind you usually, right? I don't know.
Yeah, because it's very much like I get the thing about it, because it is like arcade. Like it's very much like kind of fine with feeling very artificial in terms of like, no, you move up the field. Like you're not going to get like some great start and be at the front of the pack. Like, the whole race is you kind of start, you're behind and you make your way up the field as it goes on. So most races it is just, you overtaking cars. Whereas I guess the cop car thing is like, you have to worry about cars kind of coming from, behind for once. Like, I guess that's the wrinkle there. But yeah, it's not very substantial, but no. It's been a little while since I played it, but I think that's kind of the gag there, if you like.
Yeah, and so the final 2 tours are the Dino Tour and the UFO Tour. Now, the basic tracks from the arcade games were like Death Valley, Madagascar, London, Rio de Janeiro, and Singapore. And so, like, in a cute touch, like, they changed their names when they get a makeover. So I'm guessing that Carnaby Dash must be the London track, but in the Escape Tour. There's Oxford Circuit, again, it's the same thing. Neon Tsunami is that might be a little bit anyway. It's the I have no idea. This makes no sense. There's like a Hong Kong 2089. Maybe there are more tracks that are original to this game than I think. Unless unless I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something. But the ones I like the most are Dino Janeiro and British Invasion for the UFO Tour. So again, it's just a freaking London track, but now there are UFOs shooting instead of helicopters shooting. There are no balloons as far as I can tell.
Damn it!
Well, if John wanted them to pick a side, and they did. So, I mean...
Right. But I can't say... I can't say there are no balloons, because there might be. Things are going so fast in this game that it's very easy to just miss stuff. I've seen at least 2 giant donuts. One of which, was like rolling down in front of me, rolling down the road, and another one I went through the hole. There might be like hot air balloons somewhere, but I did not go. I didn't drive on them. I didn't, jump at them or anything like that. So I just didn't see them. But yeah, so this is the kind of like just complete nonsense that, that can be fun for a few hours. The game has like the easy and normal modes unlocked at first. They really want you to play through easy, by the way. Like, I started with normal, and then I saw, like, okay, that did not give me the medals for the easy tracks, so I'm gonna have to play those later, which is kind of annoying. But then, like, once you do get a gold on every tour, then you unlock hard, and then there's at least 2 more, difficulty settings above that. And it's all about, like, they try to give you a reason to go back and to grind. So you keep unlocking more and more absurd vehicles. And then, like, the more you play those, you level them up, which allows you to then buy a neon kit for them, and then a trim kit, and then improve the engine. And as far as I can tell, those are the 3 kind of upgrades that you can give your vehicles. But of course, now we've already, I think, sold the punch, but like you do get vehicles that are cars or motorbikes. You also get like a Triceratops. It can be your vehicle. And so, yes, you can have a neon kit on it. And yes, you can give him the trim kit, so like basically the head becomes chrome. And,
all right. Now, does the Triceratops does it like run, or is it a Triceratops with wheels, or what?
It is they did give it a running animation. Is it convincing? No. It's very much like, if you think like, oh, like that must have been a lot of work to make the Triceratops feel and behave.
No.
Well, no, like they were not concerned with such things at all.
But
it is. Like you can see that, yes, like it is moving its legs. It's like running down the track.
All I have to say is chromed head, underlight kit, Triceratops. Fuck you, John Hammond. You ain't shit.
Yeah, unfortunately, the neon kit is not an underlight. It's just like around the whatever you call it, the bone
you gotta
thing.
Have the undercarriage light. I mean,
there's a lot of missed opportunities here. I mean, if you're gonna be riding a Triceratops, you got to do that right.
Yeah.
That's what I always tell people when they're getting ready to go out on the town.
That's right. I mean,
No, you do see the rider when you're driving on a motorbike or a quad, like an ATV or something, but there's no one riding the dinosaur. So the dinosaur is the vehicle, but it's also the driver. It seems like you are the out of control dino with a trim kit. So
I feel like this Triceratops needs just the number 2 with the letters WYCKED on the side of it. Just all the way in. God. Beautiful.
And so the gameplay is very simple. You like, there's a brake. You'll never use it. Like, there's absolutely no reason to ever brake. I don't understand why they bothered. There is oh my god!
The button has to do something, Guillaume.
Because I mean, it's true. Even if it's so propulsive. Like, it's just like if you kind of hit a barrier or something, you don't really lose speed for that reason either.
Right. There's very little feedback that you actually slow down when you hit a barrier. Like, it's it wants
to keep you moving. Just at all costs. Again, you're very much an arcade mentality, and I guess it's in the relatively kind of fine margins of how sort of fast you're going, determining where you're going to finish in the order.
Yeah. So there is a drift button that's the least technical drift mechanic you've ever seen, like less than Mario Kart. That's just basically you can drift at any time, even on a straight. Like, this is made for like that snaking technique from Mario Kart DS. Like, you just have to be slightly turning. You hold the drift button, and you fill up a gauge, and the gauge is filled up just by the amount of time that you've been quote unquote drifting, not like the intensity of the drift or how well you drifted or anything like that. So basically you're encouraged to always be quote unquote drifting, to then, like, once that gauge is full, like, you can get a boost if you release the drift button. And then, like, you've got a nitro system where it's not, a continuous meter that you deplete. It's just like you get 3 of those per race, and then you're done. So it's very basic, but it is a lot of fun. But I wish there was a little bit more to it, and also I wish that it was a little bit more better explained, because you do get a lot of load screens. Unfortunately, the load screens have the tips for such helpful tips as press A twice to do a wheelie. But then, like, it kind of forgets to explain to you, why would I be doing a wheelie in the first place?
Because it looks fucking wicked, bro. That's why you do wheelies.
Especially with a Triceratops. But how
do you do wheelies with things with feet?
I don't know. You just do it. It doesn't really. I don't know. Like the Triceratops does do, like,
Is it so much to ask for consistency and regularness in my game about racing a Triceratops?
Yeah, I don't know. But anyway, all this to say that then, like, it explains, like, oh, if you hit, like, one of the jump boost things, the boost pads on the tracks are jumps. So when you hit them, like, if you're doing a wheelie, you're also going to do a backflip, which again is, sick, but it's not, again, explain why you would do that. Then you kind of realize, like, maybe it gives you more of a boost, but I don't really have a way to test that, because things are going too fast. It's not like there's a meter that tells me how fast I'm going anyway. Like, this is not a game about that. So it doesn't really explain itself very well. Like, it says, do a wheelie to when you hit a car from behind to do a jump. And again, like, that's not explained, like, why would I be doing that? And so, eventually, like, I figured out, like, okay, like, if I do a wheelie and I hit a car from behind, I'm actually going to jump over it. I'm going to kind of be boosted up. I'm going to be, like, slingshotted in the air ahead of them. And hopefully that's one way to make it to the finish line first. But I don't know. Anyway, so a very slight game, but very stupid. One thing I've noticed is that since I guess it's always the same track that does this, but because it's got a new coat of paint, I guess maybe I didn't notice it early on. But several times, like, I went through, like, this big scene where, like, there's kind of a plunging jump, and, like, you're falling, and then you go through the ground. The first time it happens, there's, like, this giant Yeti kind of thing. The second time, it's dinosaurs that are around, and, like, you just go through the floor. So it just made me think, like, this whole game is set on a hollow earth. But now that, now that I play more of the game, I realize, like, no, it's just this one track where they like doing that,
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway. So it's stupid. It's fun. It's $30 new, I think, for like the physical version. So it is 3/4 of a 1-2 everybody switch, or whatever it's called. So that's a good thing. Spend your money on that.
Can we measure all prices relative to everybody's 1-2 switch?
Yeah, it's a new currency now.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much.
Everything.
The ultimate yardstick.
Yes, it becomes the reserve currency, after. I mean, yes, America has avoided default for now, but we know it'll happen eventually, and, it won't be China. It'll be everyone's 1-2 switch that we look to measure everything.
The 800 billion one everybody's 1-2 switch budget for this year. God, I like that we're just going to keep coming back to this game, possibly forever, because of how Nintendo has decided to not market it. It's genius.
Yeah, it does. Both of these things combined in terms of the Cruis'n Blast in gameplay and the bizarre sort of release strategy of everyone's Want to Switch does call to mind Excitebots, I have to say. You kind of put those two in a blender and that's what you get, which was fun! Like, that was fun! It was a fun game. I mean, it was like a kind of repurposed, truck. So I guess there's kind of a similarity here in terms of it's like a sort of weird half a sequel, like, kind of further version of a launch era game, and maybe
with sandwiches.
Some of it is like, well, does anybody really want that anymore? So let's just kind of, if you forgive the vulgarity, shit it out, rather than actually release it like we're proud of it, and not release it at all in Europe, for instance, which have such a limited appetite for racing games. So yeah, it can't help but call that to mind. And yet, like I said, fun game. I enjoyed it. And sometimes, like, when I was playing Cruis'n Blast, which I also enjoyed, I did kind of feel like, some of those extra, like, wrinkles of something like Excite Truck, which was, similarly dumb and, entirely kind of artificial without being a literal arcade game. But it had a little more, sort of nuance, a little more kind of, interest in the kind of gameplay because of the whole thing of just like, get extra points for weaving in and out of trees and, that sort of thing. Like, it's a bit more straightforward than that in a sort of literal and figurative sense.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
No, just like the game when you see it, like when you see it in videos, when you see the trailer, Cruis'n Blast might give you the impression that it is a little bit Excite Truck-ish, but it's really so much more slight than that. Like, don't expect that too much, or you're going to be disappointed.
Again, another cultural thing where, obviously, because Europe hates racing games, they didn't get Excite bots.
Yeah, really racing games have never been popular over there.
No,
racing as a sport is not popular in Europe. So what are you gonna
do? Well, you transition.
I will. All right. Well, we've now reached the Zelda portion of this show, where we give our weekly Zelda updates. Mm-hmm. Greg, you and I have both reached the credits.
Rolled credits, yeah. But it is, I got to a point where I felt like, all right, I should do them now. Because I'd pretty much done all the main quest stuff other than, the bit that rolls the credits. And at that point, I'd kind of hit, like, 100 shrines, I think, at that time. So I had plenty of hearts. I'd long since maxed out stamina because I went for that quickly and all that. So I just kind of felt like if I'm not necessarily like, oh, I'm ready for this to be over because I've played loads of it since I rolled the credits. And I imagine, play a fair bit more. Yeah, but it did kind of feel like, even though I wasn't like desperate to see the credits, I should do it now because I'm probably just going to get like more overpowered if I put it off any longer. And so I did. But yeah, it's proceeded. I found quite a lot more shrines, and most sort of the dominant factor since rolling the credits is making more progress on mapping the underworld. That's been kind of the big kind of post-credits thing so far. But even though I've done all the main quest stuff, the side adventures, the side quests, like I'm not even up to a majority on those. Like I think the side adventures is around a third, and then everything else is less than that. So there is a great deal of stuff yet for me to experience in this game.
So I've I also cleared it. I cleared it with 120 shrines done. Which is a lot of shrines.
It is. I'm not quite there yet on my game.
I have mapped the entire underworld. I was pretty close when I completed the game. I think I only had like 15 of the light roots left.
Yeah, I think I'd reached like 50 that I'd got, so it was a long way short. That's what I mean by whereas now since completion is getting towards 90, so that when I say that's been a lot of what I've been doing, that's what I mean.
Yeah, so I finished that off this week, so I've got them all. And I know I've got them all because the game tells you, congratulations, you did it. If you're thinking there's going to be a big cool reward for that, think about the
Koroks. Yeah.
It's a little bit less. It's a bit less insulting. But
I still have more shrines than Koroks.
I do as well, actually. So I've only got about 100 Koroks. I told these guys I would wait to tell them how many shrines I'm up to at this point. I'm at 142 shrines.
You're close. Yeah, you're almost.
I haven't looked up any yet. I know. So there is a mechanism in the game that makes it easy to find shrines and light roots.
Yeah, I am.
I won't talk about it, but there is one.
Picked up the. I've heard an NPC talk about that. I don't know if I've picked up the quest to get it.
So do you mean the detector?
Yes.
Yeah, you have to go to you'd know if you have it because you hear it beeping all the time.
Right. Yeah. So I definitely don't have it. I'm trying to think if I don't know if I have the quest to go and get it.
That's not so. You'd know if you have it because the quest to get it's very easy, and it's quite likely that when you go there to get it, he's just gonna be like, "Oh, you already have it. Congratulations. Here you go."
Yeah.
That's not what I'm talking about. There is an orienteering technique that makes it very easy to know exactly where light roots and shrines are.
Yeah.
And that made it very easy for me to finish filling out the shrines and the light roots.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I've gone at this point. I've just like for my update. I've beaten the Wind Temple. I filled out the map, found all the towers, did all that. Beat the Wind Temple. I'm now over in the desert. I'm just kind of figuring that area out. And I've gone down into the depths, exposed a few of the light paths down there, ran out of arrows, and said, okay, I have to get the hell out of here because I have no way to light anything in there. Even though you can wing it. Like, you can wing it to a certain degree. Just because they don't, like, the light kind of, things down there, they aren't too far away from each other, and you can always see them in the distance. So
yeah, that's the only thing you can see a lot of the time, isn't it? That's the thing about it, is that like compared to shrines, obviously, you know, they're lit up, the ones that are on, that are visible from the surface or whatever.
Yeah. Right.
But like, especially different lighting conditions, weather, are you actually somewhere high? Like, you still might not see them.
Yeah.
But with the light roots, like, they are the one and only thing that are lit up a lot of the time, so.
But a lot of times, they'll make it so you can see it from one, but as soon as you leave that area, level geography will block your view of it.
I absolutely love it. I love when, you see one in the distance, and the thing is, you have no real ability to judge how far away it is, because there's nothing like, what is it relative to some other landmark? Nothing. It's just a void. It's black. So, like, okay, let's pull out the kind of the scope so you can put a pin on it. And now let's look at the map and see get a real sense of how far away it is.
And then, fuck, it's so far.
It's ridiculously far.
It's really weird because at least twice I did that. And then, like I was actually blinded by my marker because there was a tree in the way that I couldn't see.
Mm-hmm. Yep. But the thing is, a lot of times, and once you get to the point where you know where the light roots are, and it's just a matter of getting to there, that a lot of times you'll realize that light route you marked, you're going to pass 3 of them you won't see because the level geometry is blocking them to get there.
No, that's the other thing that really kills me is when you do activate a route and you kind of, obviously everything's pretty well illuminated then within a certain kind of radius, you could see what the landscape was actually like. Right. And, like, some of the bits are just kind of, like, seemingly just completely random, like, pits. And it just seems to be completely evil for them to put them in the dark, you know what I mean? Like, just some of these bits where it's kind of like, you're probably, like, someone could be climbing it thinking, like, God, when does this end? And it's like, well, it actually ends really quickly, but it's just, it's kind of designed for you to think, like, Christ, what am I doing?
There was a period I went into the depths, and I wish I could post the image I took of it, because I had 666 small light seeds, and 69 of the big ones, and I'm like, all right, this is actually the funny numbers. But I left with much less of both of them because I was constantly just throwing them out there. I had a situation where there was a light root right in front of me, and it was very close to, like, sometimes they're extremely close to one another, and they'll have, like, really tiny light circles. And I was like, okay, it's right there. I just need to get to it. And so I'm just walking, and I cross the boundary into the darkness. And I'm like, well, it's right there. I don't need to throw any light seeds. And suddenly Link just starts falling. And not, like, falling a little bit. Like, deep falling. Like, into a crevasse.
Yeah, like, I need to open up the paraglider falling.
But, like, he was falling, you know, he's doing that stumble where you can't.
Yeah, because you're kind of sliding down a very kind of steep, you know, edge.
And he's just like, well, this sucks. How far down am I? And then I look up and I'm like, oh, that's it's just darkness above. I'm like, that's not good. So I just warp back to the last one. I'm like, all right, where did I fall so I can start throwing out light seeds to know what happened?
No, that sort of scenario sets up, you know, the kind of thing where, especially as John already mentioned, like, arrows can be somewhat at a premium at times. I've gone through cycles of being relatively sort of arrow rich and arrow poor, depending on what else I've been doing. You really do need to train yourself of, like, is that a wooden crate? I need to smash that. Like, there will be, even if it's one arrow, just don't turn it down, as it were. You know, like, always be. But sometimes you haven't got that many to spare. I think I already mentioned this, so I'm throwing them by hand out in front, which you can't do with that.
I always throw them by hand.
They're not going that far a lot of the time, you know, in front of you, because obviously it hasn't got the same range as an arrow. But that does set up the when you sort of, you know, you're expecting it to land a few feet in front of you or whatever.
And it just falls.
And it just keeps going and going and going and going. Oh my God. I had that close to this abyss, you know, and you have no idea.
I had one 7-hour trip into the abyss. Like, I was just down there for 7 straight hours, basically. And I was just throwing the small light. I threw over 200 small of the light seeds in that particular adventure. And there was one instance where I threw one and it just fell so far that it did nothing.
Right, that happened to me as well. Like, there's one, like, wow, I have no idea where that ended up. Like, it just went into nothingness.
So I just kept doing that, trying to find the path to where I wanted to go, and they just kept falling. So I'm still in perpetual darkness, and I'm like, fuck it, I'm going to throw a big one. And there's just like this glow about the bottom of the trench, and I'm just going to look down and go, fuck you. Fuck this. Fuck all of this.
A common refrain with that game.
At some point, you know, I got better at navigating that space and understanding, like, how that geography works. It's the same thing with the top world. Like, because I have a lot of Breath of the Wild skill that I'm carrying over, I understand how to navigate, look at that map and navigate. I can look at it and go, okay, I can read this map. I understand what it's trying to say. And I know that it's not worth it for me to try to climb the face of that cliff, even though I'm looking at a 2D depiction. I should approach it from over here. There's a similar skill you could pick up for the underground. It's different, but it's similar concept. And I got better at it as I was going, but as you start to fill in the map, there's a lot of times you're just moving through lit space. And it very much feels like a different game at that point. Because, let's not get it, like, out of sync here. When you're just navigating light route to light route, you're on a very, like, railed path. In some cases, in at least a few cases, literally a railed path. Once you've lit the area and start wandering around in it, there's some really fucked up things happening in the underground. Like, really messed up stuff where you're like, wow, what could be here? Oh, good, it's a boss. It's like a refight of an existing boss. And so to John's like, hey, I ran out of arrows. I had a fight with Colgera, who I won't talk too much about. But it's a boss very predicated on arrows, where I just ran into him in the underground and had none arrows. And so I had to fight that bastard with no arrows, which basically means turning Link into strategic falling.
I mean, could you... I don't even know how you would do that without arrows.
You is what I said. You turn Link himself into the weapon. You are dropping him on weak spots.
Just like you smash the ice.
The thing I had with that when I fought that
at speed.
When I fought that the second time, what I had was I didn't really... Well, it was a little bit tight on arrows, actually, but I had enough. But I hadn't done the light route. So I fought it in the dark.
So the first time I encountered one of the bosses down there, it was in the dark, and I just saw the name and went, wait, what? I threw a light seed, and sure enough, there it was, and I'm like, nope, and just start running. Just absolute beelining the fuck into the darkness away from anything, because I'm like, not today. Don't want that. And, it was bad. It was a bad scene down there. It's... Now the thing is, and I talked about this with, the Gloom Hands. I'm hunting them now. Because I can. Because I've become so vastly overpowered.
Yeah, I did not see them for ages. I saw them really early on, absolutely just get the hell out of there. And then I saw them much, much, much later when it's like, okay, well, I can stand in there now. I've got way more hearts. I've got way more damaging weapons. And yeah, so the fear factor was certainly diminished, but they are still pretty horrifying.
Mine was, I won't say what it is because I know some of y'all haven't seen it. Mine was the one from the Gerudo boss, which is a terrifying boss to begin with, in the dark. It's like, oh, this sucks on a lot of different levels, and I don't care for it very much. Thank you.
So I fought I did the Rito dungeon, and I've got maybe 40 shrines, and I kind of feel like I'm not progressing all that fast. It took me forever to get enough of those Zonite. Is that charges?
Yeah.
Anyway, to upgrade the freaking battery.
Yeah.
And I can't believe that it just gives you a third of a battery. I'm so mad. I really don't care about that though. The whole you got to refine your Zonite to and then bring it to a different place and then you can get the charges. But the place where you can get the charges, they only sell them to you 10 or 30 at a time. I haven't found a place where they sell them to you more. It's garbage.
Now there are multiple places and they almost all have warps, but yeah, I've absolutely bought out the store and then warped to another one and bought out the store.
It's all about the depth though with that. It's because I focused so much on the surface earlier, I talked about the first week I had 60 shrines, and then, here we are today, and I haven't even doubled that yet, because, so that first week was so, surface. I kind of wish I'd done more in the depth sooner, and because, once I got going on the depth stuff, I started charging up the battery a lot quicker. And some of that's just because there's so much Zonite down there, but also there are, I hope this is a huge spoiler or anything, but
it's week 3 at this point.
You will find chests that just have the crystallized charges in them.
Oh, yeah. Sometimes 100 of them.
A whole upgrade is just in the chest, essentially. You still need to cash it in, but it's just there. So, once that sort of started, really kind of open things up. It says, I can use these devices for longer without having to feed it the charges from my, from the item screen. And it just kind of really fast track. Now I've only got 3 upgrades left, 1 full battery left to get. I've massively expanded the upgrade, that part of your upgrades in the past week probably.
I've had a full battery for a while because I spent a bunch of time in the depths. What I will tell you is there's another cycle of upgrades, Greg.
Oh, nice. No, but it does.
You'll never need them.
No, probably not, because it does last a pretty long time now. Like the way it depends what you're running.
The wing dies before I run out.
Yeah,
I mean, that way.
Yes,
I only have one, like just with the 3 battery things, and it's gotten me pretty far. Like I'm actually surprised at how much I've been able to do. I only have like 6 hearts, 1 battery. Like, I really just don't really have a lot. But I'm just.
You need to invest in yourself, John Lindemann.
I do. The one thing I'm wondering though, and the kind of thing, and like not having that stuff really hasn't bothered me too much. I just like run around, whatever. It's like there's a lot of stuff I probably could be doing better, but whatever.
Oh yeah,
I'm just enjoying myself, right?
I've been watching I went and watched my my Quest of the Hero thing, which is not DLC this time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And there, especially, I talked about the beginning where I ended up in this weird state where I'm doing a bunch of hard shit early. Mm-hmm. And there is so much like me just fucking around. Like there's a bridge, there's a fortified bridge in the mountain region near the Nehru province. I think it's actually the bridge crossing into the province. And it's just fortified. There's a bunch of enemies there. They've built a little fort on it. And I can just see myself throwing myself against it over and over again, and just getting killed.
Yep.
And then I navigate around it. I can actually see myself do it, and then I go do a bunch of stuff in the Nehru province, and I disappear for a while, and I realize I've actually dropped into the depths. Mm-hmm. And then I come back up, and I come down the mountain back over that bridge, and just steamroll. And I can just see that I steamrolled through it. Like I stopped there for like a second, and then kept moving. Which means I exterminated that bridge on the pass-through.
Yeah.
I was holding off on saying this, and I'll say it now. So the trick for getting power in the first game, in Breath of the Wild, was being willing to go into the castle. Mm-hmm. Because there were so many weapons in there, and they respawned on every blood moon, or whatever they called that thing. Mm-hmm. And they were really good weapons, and effectively you would never have a shortage of weapons. And there was some clothes in there that were pretty good. There was some money, there was shields, there was stuff that was useful for you. In this game, it's the underground.
Yeah.
Zonite mining is a big thing. You can get a lot of upgrades out of it. There's opportunities to get things you can sell for money down there. There's a lot of ore.
Yeah, that's one of the things I was wondering is how to farm rupees, because I'm always running out. And the thing is now, it's like, of course, to progress in the game, it's really the thing that costs you money is buying armor, specifically so you can survive in cold climates, survive in hot climates, because doing that with food it's a real pain in the ass.
I was never thrilled about that, and I've gone through big portions of not having that much money to spare, because until I went down into the depths, I didn't have like loads of the precious stones to sell,
right?
And they have the precious stones are used to upgrade like equipment quite a lot as well, which is a big deal. Like, it's one thing getting more hearts, like obviously, like you'll encounter enemies early on and you have so few hearts you're worried about getting killed easily. But if your defense sucks, like you can have quite a few more hearts and you're still really vulnerable. So getting the ability to upgrade the stuff is big, but you need the materials to upgrade it, and you need some money, especially for the uppermost upgrades. Oh yeah, it's quite expensive.
I've sold a few diamonds, but not a ton. But diamonds are worth like 500 a pop. I've still got like 11 of them at this point, so I'm good.
I sold a bunch of opals, and I was like, am I going to regret that? Because I don't really have an idea of what you actually use opals for.
So I have more opals than I know what to do with.
Okay,
so
good.
I'll look at what I've got, and see if I've got a bunch of them. I'll sell a little bit off the top. But
that's generally what I've done. But I haven't taken it all the way down, because I'm like, maybe there's something a bit of gear I'm going to get, and it's going to, especially with the precious stones, like you just feel like it'll probably be used to upgrade some piece of gear. And the opals in particular are used to upgrade the Wind Waker costume.
Right.
Okay.
So, which I did choose to invest in. Because, again, it can be tough to upgrade everything in one set, because they generally ask for the same kind of stuff. So it's like, all right, yeah, well, I've got enough amber to upgrade, one part of that set. But if I was going to do all 3 parts, like, then I'm going to be running low. So I haven't really upgraded like an entire set yet. I've got each part that I'm wearing is upgraded to the max, but they're not all the same thing, because that would mean like farming the same resource just more than I've been willing to.
So the armor is a real bastard. The actual like suit of armor, because that thing's got massive defense. I've got one of them up to 4, but it wants Hinox guts, 3 of them for each piece to get to the 3rd tier. The 3rd tier. First off, Hinoxes don't drop their guts very often. But also, there just aren't that many of them.
Yeah, that's the thing. There just aren't that many of those sort of world boss.
I need 12 to fully upgrade to tier 3.
Like, those world boss kind of monsters are few and far between. Like, there's just not many.
I'm literally... so I had a stretch where I was literally hunting Hinoxes just to try to get their stomachs. Mm-hmm. And it's a rare drop. So, of their drops, it's a rare drop. So it's like, okay, this sucks. I had 2. So getting the armor fully upgraded. I mean, the armor right now, I'm getting plus 12 from them with 2 upgrades, or plus 12. Yeah, plus 12 defense. The one I've got on 3 is plus 18 defense. It's a massive change.
Yeah.
Like, it's a sea change in how much strength you have. And that I collected all that armor in one place. Like that's all in one little quest area that they've done. In the underground, there's tons of clothes, and a lot of them are weird and specialized crap. Like, there's a bunch of weird stuff you get down there, and there's a bunch of, like, hey, this is the Twilight armor, or other armor that's like
the references.
Homages. But one of my favorite pieces I've collected is available to all of y'all at this point. It's actually up in the Sky Islands, which we haven't really talked about that much. It's these Trials of Courage, which is basically just like, how fast are you willing to fall and fly through rings?
It's like a Pilot Wings minigame, isn't it?
Yeah, and there's one for each piece of armor, and what you get is a kit that lets you, when you're in dive mode, lets you navigate a lot more.
Yeah, I've got 2 out of the 3 of that.
When I got the 3rd one, it was like, oh my god, this is almost uncontrollably fast now. He's like rocketeering across the sky. I'm like, oh Jesus, what is happening?
Well, speaking of the Sky Islands, I really enjoyed the whole run up to the Wind Temple. That was fantastic. It was so cool.
Yeah, that's really good.
It took me forever, though. It's like I had no idea what I was getting into, and then I'm like, oh my god, I've been here for like 3 hours doing this. I did not realize that it was going to be this involved.
Well, I think the thing that's really kind of it really brings home like this kind of one of the big differences between this and Breath of the Wild versus the old Zelda games. This idea of okay, there's a thing in the sky. It's going to be a dungeon. Like, you kind of know, right? Like that's going to happen.
Yeah.
But just the fact that like there's no like, okay, we get so far and then we're going to warp there, right? Like a cutscene's going to happen, and they're going, no, because it seems so far in the sky, and you see all these like disparate bits of platforms and stuff, and it's just like, okay, no, you're gonna not literally walk it, but obviously, but you are going, navigating every step of the way.
You have to figure it out
from to the mountaintop. Up the platforms, up to the actual dungeon itself. Like, it doesn't kind of cheat any of it with a warp or a cutscene or cutaway. You do it. Every bit of it. Like, when you're at ground level, it seems almost unimaginable, this massive scale of it, and definitely, in old Zelda, you aren't going to be, like, actually go in.
There'd be like a warp on the ground.
Yeah, like exactly. even while I was doing it, I was like, okay, like I'm not actually going to go all the way up there, am I? And I'm like climbing, and then I just keep climbing, and then all of a sudden I'm like, yeah, we're doing this.
So I reached the Stormwind Arc before I reached the Ruto village. So I just saw it, and I'm like, where is that going? And I just did it on foot, and then I get there, and I'm like,
because you couldn't even get in, right?
No, you can get there.
Well, can you just like go down and stand on the arc, but nothing happens?
I solved a few of the puzzles, but I couldn't do the thing. I couldn't flip the metaphorical switches.
Oh my god, that's amazing!
Right. So I'm like, I guess I have to leave now, and then I just left. But there is another area that is inaccessible until the late game. That I found very early. I mentioned that this thing I felt very missable. Well, because you're not supposed to go there yet.
Yeah.
But I navigated through what I think the game was supposed to be like an unnavigable storm, and just did the thing it wanted me to do anyway. And then afterwards, I'm like, oh, this would have been a shitload easier if I just followed the sequence.
Yeah,
there's a lot of that. Again, we talked about this, I think a couple of weeks ago. Just the trade off of it, being willing to let these things happen. There's kind of swings and roundabouts with it. Like, there's definitely things where I felt like I should have done them sooner, and it didn't. I would have been better off if I had. And then obviously you're talking about the reverse, where you're doing them way kind of too soon and stuff. But it does enhance that feeling of discovery. That really does, kind of, and it just brings this feeling of uncertainty about everything, like whether, is this something I quote unquote should be doing or shouldn't I? But, when I'm down in the depths, sometimes there's been this sort of, especially in the more early times of that for me, when I hadn't got that many of the light routes, I'm kind of asking myself, this thing I'm trying to do, this distant light route that I've kind of marked, and is this something I should be trying, or should it really be no, there's going to be an entrance to the underworld that will just take me right to that light route, and I'm trying to cross this ridiculous expanse with pits and enemies and sheer surfaces and gloom everywhere, and but sometimes, it turns out there isn't an entrance to the depths for a decent area of that. So you just, I think that uncertainty just, it heightens things, and it makes for interesting choices.
Yeah, it feels like you're actually discovering things. Even more so than Breath of the Wild. The fact that, and Greg, you can you know what I'm talking about when I say that I went to a place that they're trying to keep you actively from getting to until the end game.
I think so. Yeah.
That gives you a very interesting and useful power when you get there. That I had as my second power. so it does all kinds of weird shit to the plot of the game.
Yeah.
Because there's all kinds of hey, you guys should know this now. You should know that too. You should absolutely have an answer to that. You should be able to answer that question too. This shouldn't be a mystery. But there is this sense of I did that and I probably shouldn't have, but it really felt like Link was out exploring and found a thing and just ran it to ground, rather than he's being guided by, NPC character who exists simply to give him guidance. I almost never checked in with the main characters. I would check in very rarely.
It almost seems a hassle in some ways. You're because the thing is, you're so used to games just being breadcrumbing you, okay, now go here.
Yeah.
And making it making a very clear, in something like Skyrim, where it's very clear, this is the main quest. These are the side quests. You will accomplish nothing outside of these things.
And they you can absolutely have this game do that for you, but you don't need to. I basically, if they hadn't, early on when you talk to Purah, she tells you oh, there's 4 areas that are being disrupted. You should go investigate them, Linky. If I hadn't had that conversation with her, I don't think it would have materially changed the outcome of what my Link's journey through Hyrule was, because he was going to do that anyway. That was where he was going to wind up. Because most of the time, I either reached those places because I knew where they were from Breath of the Wild, and so I was looking at the map and just trying to figure out how to get there in this new kind of messed up geography. Or I just stumbled into them. And it's in the case of the Stormwind Arc, I literally is I landed on it and I'm I don't think I'm supposed to be here. What's happening? But the first dungeon I did was the one in the Garuda, which is just a ridiculous thing to have done. and literally it was because I landed there and I accidentally did the plot. And I had done some of the stuff that the plot asks you to do. So when I was having conversations with characters, oh, you already did that? Cool. let's keep going. And at that point, like, we're standing outside the dungeon at that point. Like, oh, we're here. All right, I guess we're going to do it.
I just haven't been as lucky, I guess, like stumbling upon stuff. Like, usually it's not a significant thing. I still don't have, I haven't upgraded any suits. I only have 2 of the music troupe saved. The drums guy, which was fun, get him out of a pit, and the horn. Or maybe I'm getting the both. No, yeah, the drums was not in the pit. The horns guy was, but yeah. Anyway, so I got 2 of them, but I haven't made my way back to the ferries.
It's worth it. I actually did most of the game using the kit that you can buy from a bunch of different stores, the Hylian gear, which is that weird, like, purpley colored one.
With the hood and to go with that's one of the pieces that's maxed out for me. Is the Hylian hood with the Wind Waker tunic.
They're very cheap to buy in the stores. They're the cheapest gear you can buy.
Right.
They're an instant upgrade over what you have, and upgrading them makes them pretty effective. And they're pretty easy to the material to upgrade them is pretty available.
Yeah, for the first few anyway. Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, so I was listening to some podcasts, and like the guys were saying, like, oh yeah, like when there's a weapon, if it's less than 30, like I don't really like pick it up, or like I always immediately upgrade my stuff when I get it. And I think maybe am I misunderstanding the fuse power a little bit? Like, should I be fusing my items more? Because usually, like, I just a rock, I put it into my shield. A rock, I'll put it on my sword.
That's really easy, but they don't give you a ton of bonuses. So I'll give you a good one. So when you kill Zonite Guardians, they drop their horns.
I should put it on Zonite equipment, I guess.
Well, you get horns is what I've been fusing. Like, that's kind of what I got hip to was, those horns, you should be fusing them just to regular.
Yeah, they're very useful.
Yeah. They try and tip you not just with the constructs, who are mechanical, so it kind of makes sense. But even the monsters that we've seen in Breath of the Wild have got new sort of protrusions that just happen to look like something that could make a trident, something that that could make a kind of big scythe type thing. I mean, my favourite is one that I just found. Like, I assume it's just because I'm seeing like higher class enemies now, with the number of hearts,
the silvers and blacks.
Someone's got a bloody circular saw sticking out of his head.
They sure do.
Like, what is that? What am I going to fuse that to make my own circular saw? So yeah, it's everybody, not just the constructs, but like I said, you want to kind of keep Zonai stuff with Zonai stuff. That's the best fusions you can make for
bonus.
that.
And so the monster parts should go to monster weapons.
Or like the ones where you've got like some sturdy wooden stick or something, put it on that.
So I put a tooth or a horn.
Teeth are good for arrows, right? Like if you get
teeth are good for arrows. We talked about the fact that the Gibdos are back. They have a huge number on their drop.
Yeah,
but they're very, very, very fragile.
It's brittle, yes, as you might imagine.
But as an arrow, holy shit!
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. It's like, well, this massively increases attack, but it breaks straight away. Oh, but I can put it on an arrow. Well, it's going on a lot of arrows from now on.
There is a Gleeok that was exclusively murdered with Gibdo bones. just absolutely slaughtered by Gibdo bones. There are, and we talked about this last week, some bosses, like the Talus, will drop items you can't put into your inventory. That you can only Link can just pick them up in his head. Those are usually really nice.
Yeah,
they're gonna probably make
you're gonna
hammers.
have to sort of fuse it on the spot. You're gonna have to do it with what you've got there and then, which is like, that's one of the times where it's like, okay, I get this is where it kind of makes sense that you have the fuse as kind of like a power from the wheel of like, the powers that you've got. But for a lot of the time, couldn't we just do it in the menu?
Yeah, it would be fine.
Why do we have to go to the menu of enormous number of different things and then drop that on the floor and then pick the way? It is like for those special things where it's like, okay, this you can't put this in the inventory. I've made use of that a number of times. Like I've had a kind of the luminous talus core on the shield,
so good.
So you could light. I talked about walking around in the mining gear early on, but it's like, well, once you put that luminous stone on your shield, it's kind of like, we don't need that luminous gear anymore because you just lit up all the time. And the thing with shields, it's relatively easy to avoid it breaking. You just got to remember to swap to another one when you actually want to fight. And then there's stuff like, this is good because funny, I avoided doing the desert for ages because, it's hot and cold and I can't afford the gear, but what I ended up navigating it with was weapons. So if you've got a staff that you fuse with a red ruby, then that becomes a fire staff, and that permanently keeps you warm when it's cold by just having it on your back. Or if you get the flame talos core, you can put that on your shield and that'll keep you permanently warm without changing your gear, and vice versa for cold things, so it like that sort of stuff. I kind of like, okay, I just have to make a decision. I have to fuse it to something right now to take it with me at all when it's a boss or a mini boss type thing. But the rest of the time, just let me do it in the menu.
Yeah, and those are the things I was mentioning last week where I'm like, and you can just go to Terrytown and split them so they never go away as long as you're careful to not let them get destroyed. So I've got so many now, I'm sticking them on shields for no reason other than I need a place to put them. It's like, okay, I killed a Talus, I don't really have any open slots. Well, stick it on a shield, boop, and we're good to go. And then I just carry it out and make whatever swaps I want to make and call it a day. But yeah, the fusions are everything. Now, I mentioned going to the underground is a way to get powered up. You should go to the underground because there are things down there that are very useful for this specific question. That will give you a leg up when it comes to weapons. That's all I'm going to say about it. But it's very nice. They're very nice to have, and
I haven't found good weapons down there that much though. And it's weird because there's these kind of weird, ghostly.
Okay, so this is what I'm talking about. But there's a difference. Those weapons aren't corrupted. They're not brittle.
Huh.
They're good. So that's the big thing. All the weapons you find down there aren't corrupted. So they don't smash right away. So if you fuse things to them, they'll last longer than weapons that you find on the surface.
I had not noticed that.
Yeah, okay. That's the advantage. And so there's an ample supply down there. And so that's basically that plus my fusion strategy. Weapons became a non-issue. So it became min-maxing my weapons. And so I've got weapons now that are 60. And so I save them. I save them for things like the King Gleok, who I'm going to fucking murder this weekend. It's going to happen. It's going to take me forever because I've already tried once and it took me forever. But it's just things I don't want to mess with. So when I finally took out Ganondorf, I had a weapon that once I knew I knew I was going to need to have more than just the sword that seals evil handy. I had a sword that I just bludgeoned him to death with at some point. It's just, this is my boss beating sword. And I just saved it. I saved it for a long time until something needed it. And then it came out and that was its job. I would say also look for one-handed weapons. This game actually has a relatively small number of them compared to its predecessor. Yeah. And so
it's funny because I was listening to a podcast again, and they were keeping the one-handed weapons specifically to attach two-handed weapons to them, so that they could swing two-handed weapons with just a one hand, which was kind of a game changer.
I can see that because ultimately the issue is largely that you can only use a shield with one-handed weapons. So I've got there's a Zonite Elite Shield, or whatever it's called, that's 50. And then there's a Royal Shield that's 55. I've expanded my shields a bunch of times. It's full of unused ones of those shields. Because I very rarely have a two-hand or one-handed weapon, so my shields don't get any use. They don't take any damage.
Yeah, that's what I was saying with the Talos thing on there. Like, it's just, I'm not burning through shields, so I can kind of keep that on there and not really have to use it in a pinch or anything, because a lot of the time you just kind of... And the game rewards you for dodging, with the flurry rush and stuff, so, it's not always about blocking so much as it is about dodging and doing a bunch of damage, so, you could definitely keep those around, but, I mean, I suppose... one day a spoiler cast is going to be in order. We did one for Breath of the Wild, so we're obviously not going to go into the full-on type of discussion here. But I suppose before we wrap up, we should sort of perhaps broach the subject of how we felt about the sort of narrative climax of the game, even if, like I said, I've been playing it for probably a fair bit longer. I think you probably have a longer tail for me than Breath of the Wild did, not just because there's more stuff in the game, which it definitely is. I mean, there's a lot more stuff in the game, but also because I've got this digitally, which I didn't with Breath of the Wild.
Yeah. I'll say that, and when we get to spoiler cast, I'm going to go ape shit on this game, because there's a bunch of stuff that doesn't really make a ton of sense.
I would agree, yes.
But the narrative plot, because it's so open, the Breath of the Wild had a very thin plot. This game obviously has a response to that, and that the plot is much beefier.
It feels like it wants to be, to kind of have a bit more of a, higher priority than it did, before. But, I think it's interesting. Like, obviously, the primary device in the Breath of the Wild was the memories, right? Which they had the geographical element of the incident in question that's getting recalled is, where it happened at the spot that you trigger it, right?
Right.
So
the memory is literally Link's memory coming back when he goes to the spot of significance.
The amnesia concept, and you have to stand at the spot where the thing happened and it triggers it. So it's like I kind of like you said, it wasn't the thickest kind of story, it was most substantial kind of story stuff, but I kind of respected the elegance of the kind of concept, right? Of like, you've got amnesia, you've got to trigger the memory by being in a particular place, all that.
Right.
Now, this time you've got a geographical element to it, but it's nothing to do with like, an experience that Link had himself. It's nothing specifically to do with that location in terms of that's where the thing happened at all.
No.
It's just like, the geoglyphs, like the picture that they make is pertinent to the memory in question. And I wonder if that's like, is it a price?
Make any sense?
Is it a price worth paying to have the fact that people will inevitably then discover them in a non-chronological order? For just so that, yes, but I mean, you went to the spot that's a Puripad, so that had to be the Puripad one. Because otherwise you could have just had it that, you go to whatever one and it just plays in a prescribed order. Whatever ones you go to, it just plays in chronological order, so you see a more coherent story. I mean, I can imagine, I'm relatively open to kind of like non-linear storytelling, I was a kid when everyone went nuts for it in Pulp Fiction and all that, but I still kind of feel like it doesn't make as much sense to compromise on that just for like, but it's the Puripad compared to what it was in the first one.
And in the first one, you could also get them out of order. And I did, but like, you're right, it made more sense there. But in this case, so the first one I got, besides the one it gives you, was chronologically the last one. Now, there's one you get after you've seen all the others. That's the last one.
Yeah, that's the one bit of kind of gating they do. I mean, I do wonder whether maybe you could have, if not strictly just like play in order regardless of which ones you go to and what first, they could have maybe split it up into sets or something, just so you didn't see like the stuff that's kind of almost renders some of the other ones redundant.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. Like, so that was the one I got first, and then there's one that has big foreshadowing energy, where basically it's one person telling another one, well, don't do that, it's very bad, here's all the bad things that will happen if you do that.
Yeah.
And immediately you're like, well, that's gonna happen.
Well, yeah, and for me, it was like, I got the one where a character pretty much looks at kind of the gravestone of another character.
Yeah.
And I basically found out that character had passed away before I even saw
who that character was.
Well, before you met them.
Yeah, like I knew who that character was vaguely, but I was like, okay, somebody's died here, but who is that? And then later on, I got the other cutscene where it basically explains why that happens and who it happened to.
I'm actually okay with the stuff coming in kind of ad hoc. Yeah. I think it's just more the narrative mechanism through which Link is discovering this information is stupid.
It's definitely less natural than the idea of triggering a lost memory, isn't it?
But they could have come up with a mechanism that isn't just reusing that mechanic where it makes more sense, because there's a very comparable quest line about finding out stuff from the past that makes a lot more sense. Link is out hunting artifacts that documented the past, and then he's having them translated. Like, that would have been... Yeah. And these people are working with a technology that's effectively magic anyway.
Yeah. So I haven't found enough of the tiers to have really an opinion. Like, so far, it seems okay to me, but I don't know what pieces I'm missing so
it's
far.
Not bad. It's not bad.
John, you've seen all of them, right? Basically.
Yeah, well, the thing is, at a certain point, you realize you're like, oh, well, they're actually trying to tell a story that plays out in order here. These aren't just like disconnected, fragments or something, or standalone movies.
The last one I got was just someone just writing down, like, "Don't believe his lies" on a picture. So I'm looking forward to finding out what that's about.
There you go. There's one that's a battle scene that's like super metal.
Yeah.
And I think that was the third one I got. I'm like, what the fuck story are we telling right now?
Is this with the unicorn?
Yes.
I love the unicorn.
There's so much weird shit in this that it's...
I need rideable unicorn, even though I haven't used a horse for like several hours of gameplay.
I only use a horse when I think it's going to be cool. Because I do have my giant horse from Breath of the Wild. And it's just like, I just like the stable people when they're like, you can put new gear on your... Oh, not this horse! I don't have gear for this horse.
It was a really cool moment when... Like, there was a part in the earlier going when, I found one of the skeleton horses in the overworld. And I was riding around. I thought, oh god, this horse is so good. Like, it's so much faster than the regular horses I've been using and all that. But then, of course, when it comes to sunrise, it collapses. And then later on in the depths, finding a skeleton horse and like, guess what? No fucking sunrise. I can ride this thing as long as
that was my first encounter with the skeleton horse. Was I saw in the depths someone riding at me from the darkness, and I'm like, what's that? And I see this glowing thing because they had like a glowing item fused to their weapon, and I'm like, oh shit! And then all of a sudden I got run over, and so I shot them off of the skeleton horse, not realizing it was a skeleton horse because again, in the dark.
Yep.
And I kind of walk over there and I'm like, that's a fucking skeleton horse. That's a stall horse. I'm like, I guess I'll just ride this stall horse. And that I got so much done with the stall horse.
No, that sort of earlier setting, at least, when I haven't got the expanded battery and all this other stuff like that, well, that was pretty liberating, I have to say. But in terms of, actually kind of, the rolling the credits on the narrative and all that, it's like, I feel like you felt like it was a higher priority in this game than it was in the last game, and yet they were still, because it was so successful, again, as we've said, multiple times, talking about this game, Tears of the Kingdom already, they're still so wedded to Breath of the Wild that it's like, no, well, we will still have it that it's delivered to you geographically rather than chronologically, right, even though it doesn't, mesh with that concept as well as it did before. And it's just, for me, I'd say it's weird because I feel like it's such a mishmash of previous Zelda concepts. We've always said, talking about Wind Waker, is they like to go back to concepts and express them in a different way or, reuse them or something. But this almost feels like, if it was like a comic book getting adapted into a film, a crazy idea, I know. I'm sure they'll try it one day. But and it's they'll mash together a bunch of famous moments from the comics, right? Into things which were not in the same story arc originally have now been kind of condensed into into this film adaptation of, a decades long running comic book thing. It kind of feels like that. It's a really weird sort of condensation of Ocarina of Time, Link to the Past, and Skyward Sword, and obviously Breath of the Wild itself being the foundation, just sort of put in a blender and condensed, and I don't think it's entirely successful. I feel like there's parts of it which feel like you could feel that it's a bigger priority than it was in Skyward Sword and Skyward Sword, Breath of the Wild, and that it, kind of benefits from that. I think, to me, I don't know, maybe this is just kind of getting used to it a bit more, but I felt like the voice acting was probably more effective than previously.
It was much better delivered.
Yeah, I think so. But
and also sparse enough where it doesn't feel intrusive.
Yeah,
no.
It's kind of siloed, isn't it? So a lot of and I feel like a lot of the flavor sort of writing of the NPCs out in the world, and like that's all very solid. To give the world that kind of character that it needs. And the world, just because of how much stuff has been put into it, as well as the people and all that, as James has already talked about. It feels more alive and full of character than it did before. So that's all pretty solid, but this more cinematic element, it didn't quite get there, I think, without being able to go into specifics.
Yeah, when we get to it, we can really get into this part, but I found the ending kind of undermined itself in some ways. But if you've already done a lot of the grand reveals that the NPCs want to give you at the end, where they're like, we've been doing all this research while you've been busy, and we figured out X, Y, and Z. If you've already found all that stuff without them, because the game gives you other supplemental hints in a lot of cases. Link literally just kind of looks at them and shrugs, and they're like, oh. Well, that's great, I guess.
Has anybody done a YouTube kind of supercut thing yet, where every time, they sort of ask a question and Link does that kind of gesture that he does, and obviously there's no sound, that they've put the Martinet gibberish from the Mario and Luigi games over it? Because it really does feel like that's what's happening there, but just without that noise. It's every time somebody from the Bean Kingdom's so what's going on here? And Luigi, blah, 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 blah. He's doing that just without the noise.
Because there is I'm really curious what the end of this game looks like if you just do the thing that you could do in Breath of the Wild and just be like, nah, I'm just going to go I'm going to take this stick and I'm going to go end the concept of evil. Because it does want to be so much more of a plot. I don't know how it would recast the ending if you did that.
That's an interesting question, because it does feel, presumably everything, would seem like it is still set up to do the thing that you could do. You just, in Breath of the Wild, just go to Hyrule Castle. But it feels like it's less of, they're less sort of forthcoming about that being possible. That was more of a selling point. Almost with Breath of the Wild, no, you can go there straight away if you want to, if you feeling bold, but you're probably going to be best off not doing that. With this, it's like, yes, it remains presumably, I can only imagine, possible, but they're much more like trying to cajole you away from any instinct to doing that. It kind of feels like.
It also, you unlock the divine beasts for doing what we call the story in that game. And, they in Breath of the Wild, the divine beast's involvement in the fight with Ganon is you show up, he flexes at you, and then all of a sudden he gets blasted from lasers in 4 directions. And then the divine beasts are done. That's it. That's the end of the all the shit you did to unlock those. That's it. He lost half his health bar. Congratulations, you did it.
Yeah, well, at least in Age of Calamity, you get to do some like kaiju stuff with them.
Oh yeah, you get to go stomping around like a badass.
Presumably, that's a lot of the motivation for those bits being in that game. It's just how kind of I worked this hard for that. In Breath of the Wild.
But it's much. What I'll say is, it's what you unlock in this game is significantly more involved. So I don't know how they would structure the ending. If you didn't do all of it, even if you did like different permutations of it, how would they structure it?
No, I do. I've wondered about that myself. Because I had done, all of the main quest stuff basically. Because it does have a screen where it keeps a number. So many out of so many, and it's like, okay, well, yeah, I've done everything else. So I guess I'm seeing the kind of complete ending here, the complete resolution. I don't know whether there's a kind of a downscaled one if you haven't done some of those main quest things. How they handle that. But
like, if you've done none of them, what's that last? Like the entire last scene isn't the battle's not possible. What?
Yeah, no, it's kind of interesting, but
I kind of want to know now.
It's like I say, I don't think it was like entirely effective with me, but equally it's not. I didn't feel like it was that big of a deal either, because even if it does, you kind of sense that they've attached a bit more of a priority to it, maybe put some more effort into it in certain ways. There's still so much more to this game.
Right.
The fact that it didn't quite kind of deliver probably the sort of impact that they're imagining it might do, and other people may find that it does for them, but for me it was not quite as impactful as I think they would probably be envisioning. But it was such a great kind of journey to that point, and all the stuff that's still outstanding that I can't say is that I felt too down about it.
Yeah, like when I was standing in the Outlook Tower and doing my last, or Outlook, the Tower Town, and just like going through my inventory, making sure doing my last bit of cooking, making sure I had enough arrows, making sure I had enough bombs, like I had everything I wanted, I was ready to roll. Like from the moment I dropped into the not the abyss, but the term they use for them,
chasms.
Yeah, from the moment I dropped into the chasm to the end of the credits, it's about 2.5 hours. Like that is 2.5 hours of what for me was over 120 hours at that point. Like, however I feel about it, it's relatively inconsequential in the grand scheme of things. There is a neat little cinematic at the end. I will give it that. But boy, I do wonder what at the end was like if you haven't done any of that shit.
It's true, but I mean, I think it's not too much of a spoilery type thing just about the game in general. That I was kind of left thinking about is in the build up to it, there was so much talk about how could this be the Majora's Mask to Breath of the Wild, with that being Ocarina of Time, in terms of, you having the same aesthetic, having the same link, have you reusing so many of the assets and stuff. And I mean, there are ways in which I think that, kind of was somewhat true. But the thing that Tears of the Kingdom's left me sort of feeling with, and this is, an imperfect analogy, but I would concede, but I feel like it's got quite a lot in common with Link Between Worlds in terms of, okay, well, that took the world of Link to the Past and said, well, how can we do a new game in that world? And obviously the difference here is that Tears of the Kingdom adds so much to that world.
It's so much bigger.
Yeah, it's so much bigger. You know, that's the biggest thing. Whereas Link Between Worlds, really, obviously there already was a Dark World there, you know, so, like, maybe they felt like they couldn't add, like, a third one or something to that, but, yeah, what I think where the analogy is like, okay, well, we can, kind of, really, like, it's the versatility that they brought to it that kind of to help freshen it up. Now, for that case, it was kind of introducing non-linearity, which was, in many ways, the first step on that journey away from Skyward Sword to Breath of the Wild, was A Link Between Worlds, bringing in that greater sort of freedom. And, you had things like the Mai-Mais that were kind of like Koroks before Koroks and all that kind of thing. But it was introducing the non-linearity and the whole wall merge thing, just like meaning that you could navigate the world in different ways than you could back on Super Nintendo. The linkages between the Dark World and the Light World changed and stuff as a result of using it. And, I feel like the new powers, the vehicles and all that is a similar type of thing in terms of, okay, you've seen this world before, or, a big chunk of it, but you have this new toolkit and this even more freedom. Obviously, you started with Breath of the Wild as the base, but imagine even more freedom and versatility to do stuff than that on top, and you see how much it can freshen up the game. And with the added impacts of Tears of the Kingdom is that they just add so much stuff at the same time as kind of freshening up that existing world. And I think it's a testament, really, how much I've gotten out of it to its quality, because I've said before, not really that naturally inclined to like unbridled exploration, massive worlds. Yeah, that's everything I want. Like, no, I like structure. I like, that's generally what I like. And, even with that being the case, still just really, really been enjoying it, just playing it, very, very aggressively over the past 3 weeks. But also, the whole thing about how much of this is predicated on people's imagination, to like what you can come up with and building stuff and all that. Like I've said many times, I really lack imagination. I virtually don't have one. And yet, even with that being the case, it's still been tremendously enjoyable. So I can only imagine people who've gone really wild with the building stuff and all that must have had a hell of a time, because it's still been...
There's been some videos I've seen that have been pretty impressive, making entire towers of some of the spinning sort of things and throwing flames on, like the rockets on those, and so you have basically a huge spinning tower of flames. It's just crazy stuff, and like making a rocket and like attaching the Korok with the backpack to it, and then just launching the Korok into space. It's just crazy stuff.
There is a design out there for a custom Lionel killing machine.
Yep.
Where literally you just drop it in front of them and it just smacks them to death. All right, we need to wrap up here. There will be more Tears of the Kingdom talk, and we will have plenty of opportunities to talk about it in the future. But that is going to do it for us today. As we've said previously, emails go to rfn at nintendoworldreport.com. Greg, what music are we going to wrap up with this week?
Well, on the 1st of June, we had the launch of the Etrian Odyssey remasters, the first 3 games on Switch, and of course, one of the things that's most associated with that series is the Yuzo Koshiro soundtrack. So I was like, I want to use something from that. We've had requests in the past that we've used, including one that I really, really liked, that those that Slay and Fall one that was that kind of. I hadn't played any Etrian games at that point, so I was like, heard that thing. Yeah, I need to hear some more of these soundtracks. And I think Guillaume, you requested one at a certain point, hundreds of episodes ago. So it's a little bit daunting. So we got these 3 games and all that. What shall I go with? But I remembered we had an email in. From Daniel, I believe it was, about songs to work out to that, that we answered. And one of the ones that he was talking about he really enjoyed was a song from Etrian Odyssey. Now, it has a couple of different, the third game in particular, has a couple of different kind of translations to the name, in terms of like, I think it's like, hoist thy sword with pride or something is one of them. Another one is just raise, but I would, if I have the choice, I would go with hoist every time. But then there's like multiple versions of the song itself, because you've had like the kind of FM synth, non-FM synth, the like reorchestrations in like sequels, like Etrian Odyssey, Nexus and stuff. But the version that I'm going to go with is actually something that Yuzo Koshiro himself put out on his YouTube channel. So, like, in the description for it, he basically says, like, this is a song that a lot of Etrian fans really like, and I've always been a bit sort of puzzled why they like it so much, because I personally didn't think, it turned out how I wanted it to. And then he's like basically said, yeah, here I've got a new arrangement of it that's essentially like what it would have sounded like if it was literally in a Mega Drive game. A Genesis, right? Using exactly that FM synth technology. And he's like, now this is what I always wanted it to be.
This is my vision.
Specifically, he says like a wall of FM guitars.
Oh my god!
So this is what awaits. So it does have this sort of feeling very, I know there's like a million subgenres of metal that have like actual names that mean things that I can name some, like just like thrash or speed or whatever, but like this is like grandiose FM synth metal basically coming at you.
Opera metal.
So yeah, and now this, you thought it was good before, but now Yuzo has told you this is the real deal.
All right. Well, on that, it is time for us to go. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Later.
Bye-bye.